We are on the record at 10 a.m. on April 19th, 2022. This is the Zoom recording of Dr. Richard Lynch. The court reporter is Bonnie Smith. Will counsel please introduce themselves and state any objection to the witness being sworn in remotely?
James Potts on behalf of Demetrius Phillips, no objection.
Mike Rossetti on behalf of Trimac, no objection.
Matthew Gettinger on behalf of Great West Casualty Company, no objection.
All right, Dr. Lynch, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Can you state and spell your full name, please?
Dr. Richard Lynch, R-I-C-H-A-R-D-L-Y-N-C-H.
You understand your deposition is a public document?
Okay,
You understand that your deposition may be showed on YouTube?
okay,
Objection.
You understand that your deposition may be provided to the board of ABIH?
okay,
You understand that your deposition may be shown to other boards that you're a member of?
okay,
And that those boards can determine whether your testimony is consistent with their principles. You're aware of that?
okay.
Are you aware of members of the American Industrial Hygiene Association that have been suspended for testifying against the principles of the American Industrial Hygiene Association?
Object to form, but you can
You may answer.
No,
Are you aware of members of the American Board of Industrial Hygiene that have been suspended or expelled for giving testimony inconsistent with their principles?
Object to form.
no,
Are you aware of depositions being submitted to the American Council for accredited certification wherein the members have been suspended or expelled for giving deposition testimony under oath that's inconsistent with their principles?
Object to form.
no,
Are you aware that your deposition may also be submitted to the American Hospital Association?
okay.
You're not aware of that?
You're telling me these things for the first time now, so I'm just saying, okay.
You are now, right? You're aware that your deposition is a public document.
You've told me that.
Do you doubt that, sir?
No, this is the first that I'm hearing it. I'm just accepting that that's what you're telling me.
All right. You're familiar with something called the Star Chamber?
No,
The American Hospital Association, too, your deposition may be submitted to that board for anything that you testify to under oath that would be inconsistent with that board's principles.
okay,
Same thing for the New Jersey Department of Health.
okay.
You say you're the president of your company. I read that. Is that all right? Are you familiar with an AIH rule that quoted diplomat found to be in violation of the code of ethics will be subject to a range of sanctions up to and including decertification?
Object to form.
You may answer.
I believe that I've seen that in the ethics code.
Yes, sir. You're not a physician.
Correct,
You don't diagnose diseases.
correct,
You don't treat diseases.
correct.
That would be practicing medicine without a license.
Is that a question?
Sir, if I'm asking you over the course of this deposition, it is a question. Read that back, please, Madam Court Reporter.
Question, that would be practicing medicine without a license?
Possibly. I'm not a physician. I don't practice medicine and I don't have a license.
Right. You don't know what the signs and symptoms of lymphoma are?
No,
You don't know what the signs and symptoms of leukemia are?
No,
You don't know what a Richter's transformation is?
no, I don't.
You don't know what CLL is?
No,
Do you know the difference in lymphoma and leukemia?
no,
All right. And in addition to not diagnosing diseases, you don't treat diseases.
that is correct.
You don't provide prognoses to patients,
Correct.
nor do you causally link a disease process for a patient to any environmental exposure.
No, that's correct.
You're also not a physician's assistant.
That is correct.
You're not a nurse practitioner.
Correct.
You're not a nurse.
No,
You're not a medical professional at all.
no, correct.
All right. And you're prepared to give, of course, your full and final opinion today.
Yes,
You're also not a professor of chemistry.
I am not a professor of chemistry.
All right. And you don't teach chemistry courses to Ph.D. students.
No, I don't.
You don't teach chemistry courses to graduate students.
Correct.
You don't teach chemistry courses to undergraduate students.
That is correct.
You don't teach chemistry courses to even high school students.
Correct.
You're aware that this is a chemical exposure case, true?
I am.
You've not done work for BASF.
I don't think I have.
You've not done work for Dow Chemical Company.
I don't believe that I have.
You've not done work for Huntsman Chemical Company.
I don't recognize that name.
You've not done work for DuPont Chemical Company.
Not that I can recall.
You've not done work for any chemical companies.
I can't answer that question in the affirmative. As a consultant, I get called in on projects over the last 30 years for lots of different firms, and I don't know if I've worked with lots of different organizations, but I don't recall working directly with the ones that you listed. That's the best I can answer there.
As you sit here in your deposition under oath today, you cannot name for me a single company, a chemical company, for which you performed work. True?
I think Mr. Potts, I don't think I know what you mean by a chemical company. I think that's where I'm struggling. That broad characterization. I've worked for lots of organizations that are processing or managing chemicals in different ways. So I think that's where my struggle is, sir.
You've not worked for trucking companies that haul chemicals.
I'm not sure. I'm just not certain. It's been a long time. But none come to mind as I'm speaking to you, so I can answer that way.
Very well. And if over the course of your deposition, you think of one, you're welcome to blurt it out. All right?
Fair enough.
You've not done cases that involve confined spaces in semi-truck tanks.
I don't believe that I've done a case that involves a confined space in a truck tank.
Yes, sir. You've not, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you
I'm
finished?
done. I'm done. Mhm.
You've not done work for a case involving confined spaces with chemicals in rail cars?
I don't believe I have.
Sir, you've not done work in a case involving confined spaces with other chemical tanks?
Yeah, I don't think I have done any law cases involving confined spaces and chemical tanks.
Yes, sir. And you understand the difference in an environmental risk case and a chemical exposure case?
I'm not sure that I do.
All right. And if any time you don't know the answer, you just let me know that you don't know. You ever testified on behalf of a workman who died from leukemia or lymphoma?
Not that I specifically recall.
Yes, sir. Have you ever testified on behalf of an employee that in a chemical exposure case?
Yes.
All right. When was that?
I guess I think one that comes to mind, I think I provided as part of your request for production. There was a chemical exposure case involving cleaning chemicals in a rail, a train rail cleaning
Rail car?
operation.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
And what's the name of that case?
I think it was Anatane. I think I provided that there. I think that was lines up with the question that you're asking.
You're telling the documents that were provided after 5 p.m. yesterday, the day before your deposition this morning? Is that right?
Yes.
When did you provide those documents to your lawyers?
Yesterday,
All right. What time?
sometime during
What time?
sometime during the day, as I was putting it together.
What time during the day?
I would say early afternoon or midday or something like that. I wasn't paying exactly attention to the time.
Yes, sir. Have you reviewed the deposition of Kim Barthlow in preparation for your deposition here today?
No, I have not seen it.
Have you reviewed the deposition of Joe Carson in preparation of your deposition here today?
No, I've not seen it.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Kim Barthlow's deposition before your deposition here today?
I've not seen it.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Joe Carson's deposition?
Not seen it.
Have you reviewed Brian Carter's deposition?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to his deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Jack Cole's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Jack Cole's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Ken Cooper's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Ken Cooper's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Kevin DeSalle's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Kevin DeSalle's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Zarius Dupree's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Zarius Dupree's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Chris French's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Chris French's deposition?
I have not.
Have you reviewed Heidi Gelfie's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Heidi Gelfie's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Clarence Glenn's deposition?
Negative.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Clarence Glenn's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Carter Grady's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Carter Grady's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Nicole Mollum's deposition?
No, I have not.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Nicole Mollum's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed Ken Penley's deposition?
No.
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Ken Finley's deposition?
No,
Have you reviewed Brad Pierce's deposition?
no,
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Brad Pierce's deposition?
no,
Have you reviewed Pamela Poulet's deposition?
no,
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Pamela Poulet's deposition?
no,
Have you reviewed Stephanie Rogers' deposition?
no,
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Stephanie Rogers' deposition?
no,
Have you reviewed Eugenia Sally's deposition?
no,
Have you reviewed the exhibits to Eugenia Sally's deposition?
no.
You reviewed the affidavits in this case.
I have seen an affidavit of Dr. Feinstein.
Any other affidavits?
I don't believe so.
An affidavit of Patricia Warner?
No,
Affidavits of Ken Cooper?
no,
Affidavit of Clarence Glenn?
no,
You haven't reviewed any affidavits in this case other than Dr. Trevor Feinstein.
I believe that's correct.
All right. Now, have you reviewed tank entry permits?
I have seen the forms during the site inspection, but I have not reviewed them. I've not seen them.
Have you reviewed the confined spaces manual?
The confined spaces manual.
Yes, sir. Sure. And thank you. Trimac's confined spaces manual,
No, I have not.
applicable to this case?
Not as of yet.
Well, you testified earlier, you were prepared to give your full and final testimony here today. What do you mean as of yet?
I'm prepared to answer any questions that you have.
That wasn't my question. Would you read back my question, please, Madam Court Reporter?
Question, you testified earlier, you are prepared to give your full and final testimony here today. What do you mean as of yet?
I'm prepared to answer any questions that you have. That's what I meant.
Well, you understand full and final testimony, right?
Maybe I didn't understand it in the way that you meant it.
Okay.
So if I need to fix that, I'm happy to do that.
Have you reviewed Kevin DeSelle's affidavit?
I have not.
All right. Had you been provided those 18 to 20 depositions in their exhibits, would you have reviewed them?
Yes.
Why were you not provided with those deposition transcripts?
I don't know.
Objection, form.
I don't know the answer to that question.
And why were you provided with, a half a dozen or so affidavits?
Object to the form of the question.
You may answer.
I only recall being provided with Dr. Feinstein's affidavit,
Yes, sir.
which is one.
Right. What's your understanding about why you weren't provided the other half a dozen or so affidavits in this case?
I don't have any understanding of that.
If you'd been provided with those affidavits, would you have reviewed them?
Certainly.
Yes, sir. I did notice in the documents you sent over last night that you had some lawsuits. Is that right?
I don't understand the question.
Sure. You had lawsuits that had been filed by my office against Trimac, against among other defendants. Do you recall reviewing those?
Oh, did I review like the complaint?
This is
and
an
that kind of
order for
thing?
case envelope 22F00087.
You may answer.
Just maybe if you could restate the question. I don't think I understood the question.
Sure. Madam Court Reporter, Do you mind reading that back, please, ma'am?
Question, Sherry, you had lawsuits that had been filed by my office against Trimac against, among other defendants. Do you recall reviewing those?
Okay, so yes, the lawsuits that you filed, I reviewed, that I provided there.
Yes, sir. And you understand those aren't the cases we're here about today?
I don't understand that. I'll accept that as a fact if that's what you're offering.
Who told you that you were here today to testify about one of those lawsuits?
I was told that I was here to be deposed by you.
Sure.
I don't. Mhm.
Say again, please.
I'm under the impression that I'm here to be deposed by you.
Yes, sir. And you got what's called a notice of deposition. True?
Yes.
Yes, sir. And at the top of that notice of deposition is what's called a case caption. And the case caption tells you what case you're testifying in. You're aware of that, right?
That's reasonable that's a reasonable statement.
Yes, sir. In your notice of deposition, the reason you're here today, at the very top, it reads in the State Board of Workers' Compensation, state of Georgia, does it not? Yes?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like me to pull it up, I can.
Sure, pull it up. We'll make that exhibit 1 to your deposition.
Pardon me.
That's fine.
I will have to.
There's no rule against coughing at a deposition.
I'll have to find it. Hold
Your
on.
time.
Please.
Take your time.
Okay, I have it.
Yes, sir. Do you read into go ahead. Can you send that have you done some Zoom depositions before?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
No.
All right. If you open up, if you see where it reads more and you go to chat, if you would just go ahead and drag and drop that, whatever you're referring to into chat so that we can all see that and the court reporter can make that an exhibit to your deposition, please.
So go to chat.
Yes, sir.
Say,
If you
say it again.
Sure. Down at the bottom on my screen, there's a more. You see where it's got the 3 dots and it reads more. Or you can email it to your lawyer. I mean, this is usually less cumbersome, but you see what I'm talking about?
I don't see the more on my particular screen. I'm afraid of kind of, yeah.
Sure. Down at the very bottom of the Zoom screen.
It says leave.
It says what?
Leave.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Immediately to the left of leave, the leave's in red, right?
Right.
Don't hit leave.
Right.
Immediately to the left where it reads more and has 3
It doesn't.
dots.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't. Mhm.
I don't know. How you want to just, hey, Matthew, you mind if he sends it to you and you can send it on? I can put it in there.
You talking about your notice to produce? And
Yeah,
the
whatever it is
deposition
he's referring to, whatever it is he's testifying about.
notice? Dr. Lynch, if you click on the chat button on the bottom, do you see that?
I do.
I think that you can supply it through there. If you click on that, it should open a expanded window and
Okay, it
should
says
be
to everyone.
yeah, there should
Yeah,
be an
perfect.
Oh,
attachment.
there's the more. There's the more.
I think maybe my one's
All right, so what do you want me to do here?
Just send it to everyone.
How would I, and so what do you want me, how do you want me to do that?
If you click on that little
Drag.
document
Go ahead.
Just drag it?
Yes, sir.
or that,
And drop it into where it reads type message here.
Try this again. It's not letting me drag it.
All right, you'll have to, you can't do that with the one you're looking at from whatever source you got that document. If you see the icon for the PDF, can you drag that over?
Oh, let me try that. I apologize for this, folks.
All right.
I can tell you what it is. It's the notice of deposition of Richard Lynch and notice to produce. That's what I'm reading.
All right, I'd like to make that exhibit 1 to your deposition. If you'd send that on to Matthew, he can send it to the court reporter. And do you see at the top of that deposition notice where it's got what's called the case caption, where it reads what court it's in? You see that? Very top of the page.
JHPII, we win, things change. State Board of Workers' Compensation, State of Georgia, Demetrius Phillips. Plaintiff versus Trimac Transportation, civil action file. Number 2019-127648.
Yes, sir. You understand that's the case you're here about today, right?
Okay, yes.
Okay. And that's the case you're testifying in, right?
Okay, yes, yes.
And that doesn't change any of the answers that you provided us, does it?
No, it does not.
And you weren't aware, all those depositions that I mentioned to you earlier were taken in this case. Were you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of the range of depositions that were taken in this case, no.
All right. Now, you provided me with a couple of SDSs. Were you provided any SDSs, the Trimac lawyers in this case?
No, sir.
All right. And would you have reviewed those if they'd been provided to you?
Surely.
Okay. I mean, when you understand that men have died, right? Working at Trimac, climbing into truck tanks, right?
object to the form.
Answer.
I understand that someone has died.
Well, Demetrius Phillips died. You're aware of that, right?
I am aware of that.
You're aware that he worked at Trimac for 13 years?
I'm not certain of his tenure.
All right. Now you wrote 16. And where'd you get the number 16?
I wrote 16 what?
You wrote that Demetrius Phillips had worked there for 16 years. I was wondering where you got that information.
Oh, I think that in the document you're reading, I think I don't recall if I got that from a reading of a complaint or if that was just from an initial telephone conversation with the attorneys sort of early on. These are just sort of my internal notes, but I don't recall where I got that from.
All right. And you remember when you got that initial telephone call?
It would have been in January of 2022.
22. So 3 months ago.
Right.
And are you relying in part on what the lawyers, Mr. Gettinger and Mr. Rossetti, told you?
If it relates to the question that you're asking me now about the note about the 16 years and where it came from, I don't recall whether I pulled that from a conversation or if that was within maybe the complaint. I don't recall, or the lawsuit as you described it. I don't recall where I got that from.
Yes, sir. But that question's a little different from the one I just asked you, though. Would you
Oh,
read
okay.
that question, please, Madam Court Reporter?
Question, and are you relying in part on what the lawyers, Mr. Gettinger and Mr. Rossetti, told you?
Object to the form of that question. It's unclear what you're asking, but you can answer to the extent you understand what he's asking you.
I don't understand what's being asked. I thought I'd try to answer it as it was. I thought you were asking where I got the 16 years from.
Yeah, I did. That was a different question. My question is this. Are you relying, even in part, on anything that your lawyers communicated to you, the lawyers for Trimac, either Mr. Gettinger or Mr. Rossetti, in forming your opinion?
I have not been, I don't know what opinion. I've not rendered a report. I've not rendered an opinion. So I am not relying upon information that I've received from them for any opinion.
You know, my question didn't ask anything about whether you'd written a report, right? You understood my question.
Maybe I didn't understand your question. I think you asked if I,
Sure.
if
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, sir.
That's fine. Yeah, your name has been provided, and we got some information from you last night that suggested that you were going to testify as an expert in the workers' compensation, the death of Demetrius Phillips, his case against Trimac Transportation. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of what you were provided.
My question is this: are you aware that you've been named as an expert in this case?
Yes,
And you're aware that you've been named as an expert in this case to provide an opinion,
yes,
an expert opinion,
yes,
and testify at an upcoming trial.
if needed.
The trial starts on the 29th of this month,
I am aware of that.
10 days from now, right?
Yes,
You're aware of those things. And
yes,
you're aware that in this case, Demetrius Phillips has died.
yes,
You're aware that Clarence Glenn, who also cleaned semi-truck tanks at Trimac, has died.
Object to form.
I'm not aware of that.
All right, you're aware that James Grove, who also cleaned semi-truck tanks at Trimac, has died.
Object to form.
You aware of that?
I'm not aware of that name.
You agree that it's important before you form an opinion to have the facts, right?
Yes,
And that's one thing that the AIHA requires. They actually talk in their right. And their American Board of Industrial Hygiene Code of Ethics about that, right?
yes,
So when you're not provided with 18 to 20 depositions in those exhibits, you feel like you may be missing a little something?
I've not generated an opinion yet because I have not been provided the information. I don't have an opinion yet as I have not been provided the information.
So you don't have an opinion in this case?
Object to form.
You may answer.
Not yet.
Well, when were you planning on providing your opinion?
Object to form.
I'm not in control of the schedule. I'm just responding to your notice of deposition, which is before I've rendered an opinion. So I'm only responding to what I'm being, what's being demanded, but I've not yet generated an opinion,
You understand you're under oath, right?
of course.
You understand the nature of the oath you took.
Yes,
And I asked you earlier, I mean, this is in the record, it's part of your deposition testimony today, whether you were prepared to give your full and final opinion today, and you testified under oath. Yes. You recall that?
Objection on
Form.
misstatement of testimony.
I said yes, and I also said that I might have misunderstood your question, or that I didn't understand your question in the way that you asked it, and so I'm prepared to clarify that.
So your testimony, while your testimony, when we started your deposition, was you were prepared to give your full and final opinion today. That answer, of course, being under oath. Your answer is now about 40 minutes into your deposition that you have no opinion. Is that right?
Object to form.
You may answer.
I don't have.
Who's objected? Who objected?
Ms. Rossetti.
All right. Wait. You may answer.
Just repeat the question. I got distracted there.
Sure. Madam Court Reporter, do you mind reading that question back, please?
Question. So your testimony when we started your deposition was you were prepared to give your full and final opinion today. That answer, of course, being under oath, your answer is now about 40 minutes into your deposition that you have no opinion. Is that right?
Yes, I don't have an opinion about a question that I haven't been asked yet. So what, I think what I was anticipating is that you would ask me whatever questions you wanted to ask me, and I would answer that in a full and final form to the extent that I have information. But I don't have all of the information that I imagine may be forthcoming. And so I'm not certain what it is that you're looking for in this deposition from me, but I will answer everything fully and honestly to the best of my ability. And that's what that's what I meant in answering that question. I did not understand it in the context of the way that I think you understood it as you asked it.
Objection moved to strike as non-responsive. How many depositions have you given?
I imagine over the last 30 years, I think I probably have given, it would only be an estimate because I don't keep track of them, but maybe 30, maybe 30 or so. But it would just be an estimate.
Yes, sir. And in how many of those depositions have you testified initially that you were prepared to give your full and final opinion there that day? And then 40 minutes into your deposition, you said you had no opinion.
Objection form.
Object to form.
You can answer.
As this is the first deposition that I can recall that I'm being deposed on before I've rendered an opinion, I don't recall being in this situation before. So I don't have a recollection of this happening previously, but I've not rendered an opinion yet. So I'm simply here to answer whatever questions you have to my fullest and most honest ability.
Show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 2 to your deposition. Show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 2. This is a part of your website.
Yes, sir.
And this is a part of your website that deals with litigation support and expert witness services. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And there are two photographs there.
Yes,
And the one to the right, that's you with your finger pointed up.
correct.
And the one to the left, those are some textbooks and a Bible.
Yes,
Looks like there are, what is it, 3 texts and a Holy Bible, is that right?
yes,
I assume you're a Christian, is that what?
I am.
Yes,
I
sir.
am.
And the other books from the left, that's, what is it, Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, is that right?
Correct.
And that's a publication, is that published by the American Industrial Hygiene Association?
No, I believe that is published by the National Safety Council.
And what gives you that idea?
My memory,
What is that?
my memory. I believe that, I think that that was published, if I remember correctly, by the National Safety Council.
Yes, sir. And that's what I'm trying to read that, is that the 4th edition, is that right?
Yes,
And you consider that to be reliably authoritative in the area of industrial hygiene?
yeah, it's a reliable text, yes.
Yes, sir. And the one to the right of that, I can't really read that.
Yeah, that is the ACGIH bioaerosols textbook.
Yes, sir. And to the right of that, it's toxicology text, is that right?
Yeah, Castaret and Duels toxicology.
Yes, sir. You agree that first and foremost, ABIH certificates and candidates give priority to health and safety interests related to the protection of people? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that's from the ABIH, American Board of Industrial Hygiene Code of Ethics, right?
Yes,
And that's in chapter 1 of the text on your website there, Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, true?
I accept that, probably chapter 1.
Yes, sir. And those the American Board of Industrial Hygiene, the Code of Ethics also requires you as a member to deliver competent services with objective and independent professional judgment and decision-making. True?
Yes, sir.
And that public health and safety are your priority.
Yes,
And you're to protect employers. Yes?
my first duty is to protect employees.
Employees and the public from conditions where injury and damage are reasonably foreseeable. True?
True.
And there are federal regulations applicable.
Yes,
And you're familiar with OSHA?
yes, I am.
And OSHA stands for what?
The Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Yes, sir. And there are 2 duties for employers. One is each employer shall furnish to each employee a place of employment which is free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious harm to their employees.
5A1, that's correct.
And each employer shall comply with occupational safety and health standards under the Act.
5A2.
And you're aware of what are called chemical hazards.
Yes, sir.
And The majority of occupational health hazards arise from inhaling chemical agents in the form of vapors, gases, dusts, fumes, and mist, or by skin contact with these materials.
No, that's not the majority. I don't, if you're asking if that's a category, the answer is yes. But to say that the majority is very subjective, and I just can't accept that part of it. But chemical hazards from inhalation or absorption are one category of risks.
All right. Shows you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 3 to your deposition. And this is page 8 of Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, the 6th edition. You see where it reads chemical hazards there?
Yes.
And it reads, the majority of occupational health hazards arise from inhaling chemical agents in the form of vapors, gases, dusts, fumes, and mist, or by skin contact with these materials. Do you see that?
I do.
Do you disagree with that?
If one were to look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics annual reports that are put out by Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics on occupational health and safety issues and hazards and disease to workers, as over the years, the preponderance of illness and injury vary. And so while at the time that this paragraph may have been written, that may have been reasonably true, it varies, and one can see the rates through the BLS reports.
So you disagree with this?
As I indicated, chemical hazards from inhalation and skin absorption are important. It's one of many categories.
So my question is simply that this first line on page 8, you agree with that statement or you disagree with that statement? And if you disagree with that statement, I'd like for you to cite for me any federal publication, textbook, chapter in a textbook, a peer-reviewed article, a non-peer-reviewed article, a publication, any publication in the history of the solar system that says that that is an inaccurate statement.
Asked and answered, but go ahead.
You may answer.
I don't disagree with the statement.
All right.
But the statistics vary year by year. That's all I was saying.
All right. You agree that to recognize occupational factors or stresses, a health and safety professional must first know about the chemicals used as raw materials and the nature of the products and byproducts manufactured.
I think all of those things are important.
Yes, sir. And the required information can be obtained from the safety data sheets.
The safety data sheets and material safety data sheets are one source of information, yes.
Yes, sir. And well, the safety data sheets were formerly known as material safety data sheets, right?
Correct.
Safety data sheets are abbreviated SDSs.
Yes.
Material safety data sheets are abbreviated MSDSs.
Correct.
The SDS must be supplied by the chemical manufacturer or importer for all hazardous materials under the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard, HCS. You're aware
That is
of that?
correct. That is correct.
The safety data sheet is a summary of the important health, safety, and toxicological information on the chemical or the mixture of ingredients.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
Many industrial materials, such as resins and polymers, are relatively inert and non-toxic under normal conditions of use, but when heated or machined, they may decompose to form highly toxic byproducts.
That can be true. Yes.
Yes, sir. You agree that things like styrene and an otherwise inert polymer can make that material toxic?
Without specifics, I wouldn't argue or agree to that statement. That's a real generalization there. So I'm not prepared to argue that point.
Well, and you're here to give an unbiased opinion. You're not here to argue a point, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not willing to accept or to dispute the point you're making is what I meant to say. Without specifics.
Yes, sir. And I'll show you what's been previously marked as, this is 4. Exhibit 40, your deposition. You see the lower left, I can make that larger. Is that big enough to see now?
Yes.
Table 1A on page 9, it reads safety data sheet sections. This identifies the sections, right?
Or page 9 of what?
What?
I'm sorry, can you identify page 9 of what?
Sure, page 9 of the fundamentals of industrial hygiene.
Thank you.
Welcome. These are the sections of a safety data sheet.
Yes, they are.
And when referring to a chemical, the hazard is determined not only by the toxicity of the solvent or chemical itself, but by the conditions of its use. Who, what, how, where, and how long.
That is correct.
And toxic chemicals are gases, liquids, or solids that through their chemical properties can produce injurious or lethal effects on contact with body cells.
I agree with that.
And for hazardous materials, SDSs can be consulted for toxicological information.
Yes.
Now, there are a number of routes of entry for harmful agents, including chemicals.
Yes, yes, yes,
They include inhalation,
yes,
ingestion,
yes,
absorption,
correct.
and there are a number of types of airborne contaminants.
Yes,
Which include fumes,
yes,
gases,
yes,
mists,
yes,
vapors,
yes,
and particulate matter.
correct.
You agree that respiratory hazards, airborne chemical agents that enter the lungs can pass directly into the bloodstream and be carried to other parts of the body.
That's how it works for some chemicals, yes.
Well, that's one way, yes, all right.
Mhm.
All living cells of the body are engaged in a series of chemical processes. The sum total of these processes is called metabolism. Is that right?
Yes,
And respiratory hazards can be broken down into 2 main groups. One, oxygen deficiency, in which the oxygen concentration or or partial pressure of oxygen is below the level considered safe for human exposure.
And two is,
Well, first of all, you agree with one?
I'd agree if you kind of put them together so I can kind of see what.
Sure. All right. Two, air that contains harmful or toxic contaminants.
I agree with that.
All right. And you agree that there are what are called oxygen deficient atmospheres?
They can exist, yes.
And they can exist in confined spaces.
Correct.
And you agree there are hazards of airborne contaminants. Inhaled contaminants that adversely affect the lungs fall into three general categories: aerosols, toxic vapors and gases that produce adverse reactions in the tissue of the lungs, and some toxic aerosols or gases that do not affect the lung tissue locally, but pass from the lungs into the bloodstream.
Yes.
Those can have adverse effects on the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood cells.
Some of those may impact the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood cells. Others may not.
Yes, sir. You agree an example of an aerosol is silica dust?
Yes.
What? I didn't hear that.
Oh, I said yes.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought someone else said something. You agree that for industrial exposures, a major, if not predominant, route of entry is inhalation,
Yes.
and any airborne substance can be inhaled.
That's not true.
All right. And cite for me, if you would, any textbook, chapter in a textbook, treatise, peer-reviewed article, non-peer-reviewed article, anything in the history of the world that you're aware of that says that.
Object form.
You may answer.
The size the size of the airborne particles determines whether or not determines the likelihood of it being able to be inhaled and make it into the lung. So it's large particles generally get trapped in the upper respiratory tract in the nose, for example, and the smaller particles make it down lower. And that's an established known understanding in the field of industrial hygiene.
Yes, sir. May I have a cite for that?
Well, you'd find it in that fundamentals of industrial hygiene book when it talks about particle sizes.
So you
I don't have it in front of me. I don't have it in front of me, but larger particles are generally trapped up in the up in the nose and don't make it down into the lungs. The smaller they are, the lower into the lungs things go.
So you disagree with the fundamentals of industrial hygiene where it reads, for industrial exposures, a major, if not predominant, route of entry is inhalation. And you disagree that any airborne substance can be inhaled.
Objection, misstates the testimony given.
I think that the generalization that you're making there, I was just trying to clarify it. I think that, when you say, superlatives, they don't always apply all the time. And so I was just trying to clarify it.
But you agree that inhalation involves air?
It involves air. Is that what you said, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Air from the atmosphere, whatever atmosphere you're in.
Yes. Yes.
Whatever is in that air that is airborne can be inhaled.
Yes. Yes. Especially if it's in a gas or vapor form. But for particles, again, particle size matters. So,
Yeah, but particulate particles can be inhaled in addition to fumes, vapors, mist, and gases.
depending on particle size, yes.
Yes, sir. You agree that benzene exposure is associated with blood dyscrasias, disease, state of the blood, generally involving abnormal or deficiently formed cellular elements, which may progress to leukemia and or aplastic anemia.
I understand that benzene exposure via inhalation is associated with blood disorders such as leukemia. The rest of that statement may not be qualified to agree or disagree with. But generally speaking, I am aware that benzene is associated with blood problems, including leukemia.
Yes, sir. And you know, leukemia is a form of cancer,
Yes.
and lymphoma is a form of cancer.
Yes.
And you know what a leukocyte is?
Generally,
What is a leukocyte?
it's a type of cell, but I'm not a physician.
All right. You're aware of an agency called the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC?
I am.
I'd like to show you what's been previously marked as, so it's Exhibit 5, Madam Court Reporter. Thank you.
That's correct.
That was wonderful. Thank you. And all these, I'm putting these in the chat. Mr. Lynch, if you want to pull these up or look at any of those as we go, you're certainly able to do that. All right. I'm also showing them to you on the screen, but if you want to pull one up, you're welcome to do that.
Okay.
I'll show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 5. This is also from the text. Fundamentals on Industrial Hygiene. Did it again.
What page number is that, Mr. Pop? Oh, 135.
Yes, 135.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you see that all right?
I do. I can see it fine.
And this is table 6D from Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, page 135. And you see at the top, it reads carcinogens with possible occupational relevance. Is that right?
Yes, I see that. Mhm.
And the first section reads, and this is as of 2012, carcinogens with possible occupational relevance. You see that, right?
I do. I see it.
Beneath that, substance is known to be carcinogenic. You see that as well.
I do.
You see substances that may reasonably be assumed to be carcinogenic.
I see that.
And that's also referred to in some of the literature as presumed carcinogens, presumed carcinogenic. True?
Sure.
And if you look in that first section, you see over on the left, you agree that benzene is a substance known to be carcinogenic.
I do.
And you agree that, see in that center section where it says silica, you agree that that is a substance known to be carcinogenic.
I do.
And if you look on the left column where it reads substances that may reasonably be assumed to be carcinogenic or presumed carcinogens, do you see where it reads 2,4-diaminotoluene?
I do see that. Yes.
And do you know what 2,4-diaminotoluene is?
No.
You do not. Have you ever heard of 2,4-diaminotoluene?
Right. I have, but I wasn't prepared to answer that question directly here, so I don't want to speculate or guess.
So that's outside when you testified at the beginning of your deposition today that you were prepared to give your full and final testimony today. That's another one of those things that you were not prepared to testify about today.
Object to the form.
You may answer.
Yeah, I didn't know what you were, what you were going to ask me, so I'm prepared to answer whatever you have. That's all, to the best of my ability.
Yes, sir. That wasn't my question, though. Would you read back my question, please, Madam Court Reporter?
Question. So that's outside when you testified at the beginning of your deposition today that you were prepared to give your full and final testimony today. That's another one of those things that you were not prepared to testify about today.
Yes.
Have you ever do you know how diaminotoluene is formed?
No, I don't.
Do you know what it's composed of? Okay, are you reading something?
Me?
Yes, sir. What are you looking at on your screen?
I'm looking at yours. I'm looking at the table you have here.
All right.
So 2,4-diaminotoluene would be, a tolu, an aromatic ring, with methyl group and then two amino groups on it.
Yes, sir. And it's a presumed carcinogen. True.
From this table, it's listed there.
Oh, this is a table from your textbook that's you've got a photograph of next to the Bible on your website, is it not?
Check the form.
You may answer.
Yes.
Yes. And you're aware that Demetrius Phillips was exposed to diaminotoluene. Are you
To the
not?
form.
I I don't have that information. I've not seen his deposition or exhibits.
And so you don't have any idea whether Demetrius Phillips was exposed to 2,4-diaminotoluene?
That's correct.
And do you know how diaminotoluene is abbreviated?
I don't want to speculate if that's 2,4-D or not. I don't want to speculate.
You familiar with you see the second column here, ethyl acrylate?
I see it.
And you're aware that Demetrius Phillips was also exposed to ethyl acrylate?
Objective form.
You may
I don't have the range of things that he was exposed to, as I've not yet been provided with his deposition.
Well, when was Demetrius Phillips deposed?
I don't know. Oh, I don't know.
You see where it reads formaldehyde?
Yes.
Formaldehyde is also a presumed carcinogen, true? Yeah, I see it on I see it on that list. And you're aware that Demetrius Phillips was also exposed to formaldehyde?
Back to the form.
I don't know specifically what Mr. Phillips was exposed to.
You're not aware that Demetrius Phillips cleaned semi-truck tanks that last contained formaldehyde?
I don't know specifically, which trucks he specifically cleaned, as I've not been provided that information. I do accept, I do accept that trucks that may have contained formaldehyde might have been part of what was processed.
And you're aware that exposure to formaldehyde gas can cause lymphoma and leukemia?
I'm not specifically aware of that. That particular cancer associated with formaldehyde, I am not specifically familiar with.
Well, you sent us a document last night, an IARC publication, did you not?
Yes.
Did you read it before you sent it?
Yes.
And you read under lymphoma and leukemia that formaldehyde is a suspected cause of those cancers, did you not?
And as I understood your question, I thought you were saying that it was a known carcinogen for those.
Well, first, I'd like an answer to my question. Would you read back the question, please, Madam Court Reporter?
Question, and you read under lymphoma and leukemia that formaldehyde is a suspected cause of those cancers, did you not?
If you don't mind sharing with me I don't mind reviewing it at this point.
This is a document you sent me, man. Can you not, seriously?
Object to the form.
Object.
You may answer. If you don't know, tell me you don't know. We'll go through plenty of documents before we finish up here today, and whatever we don't get to today, we'll be able to talk to you about at the hearing here. You have an answer?
I think my answer is that I didn't understand your question as to whether or not you were referring to a known or a suspected carcinogen, or for the formaldehyde question, and I think that's my answer.
That's not the question. Would you read back the
Okay.
question, please?
Can you, sorry.
Question, and you read under lymphoma and leukemia that formaldehyde is a suspected cause of those cancers, did you not?
I don't have the entire table memorized to the extent that I would have been able to answer that question off the top. I would like to review the table if that would have made it easier for me to answer that question. So I guess the answer is, I recall that there were suspected possible cancers beyond nasal cancer associated with formaldehyde, but I did not have the details in my head as you answered the question there immediately. I would have liked to have referred to the table, but I'm not arguing with you. I'm not trying to dispute the point, but I'd like to see it.
Now, the IARC publication that you sent over last night, that's a recent publication, is it not?
Yes.
It was published in January of 2021, was it not?
I don't have the publication date for that document, and off the top of my head, you're asking me questions that I just can't answer directly. I'll accept it as true.
So that goes to that, when you testified earlier under oath today, when we started your deposition, that you were prepared to give your full and final testimony here today. You were not prepared to testify about a document you sent over to me last night pursuant to our notice to produce. Is that right?
Object to the form.
Object to form.
Any answer?
No, the answer is no. I just would like to refer to the document during my testimony. That's all.
Sure.
That's my answer.
You don't
That's
have it?
the only thing I'm saying. Mhm.
You don't, have you misplaced it since yesterday?
No.
All right. Then why don't you pull it up?
Object to form.
Okay, I have it up.
Hey, you gentlemen want to take a short men's room break while you look at that?
Sure, you want to do 5 or 10 minutes? It's 11:20.
I'm fine. I mean, 5's fine for me, but I'm open.
Why don't we,
Mr. Lynch, what are your, how much time I mean, I assume you'd like to take a break as well.
Whatever works for you. I don't have any
How
particular.
about you, Matthew, Bonnie? I'm fine. 5 minutes is fine for me. If you guys want to go 10. I mean,
I'm just gonna I was gonna suggest 10, just to give Dr. Lynch time to look at that and then also use the restroom, but
All right.
you know.
And I'm gonna, Mr. Lynch, I will ask you when we get back, whether you've spoken with anyone over the course of this break about your deposition. I would caution you against doing that. So
Objection.
you, anything else? How much time?
10 minutes. We'll say back to 31.
See you in 10.
Going off the record at 11:21 a.m.
Dr. Lynch, just make sure you stop.
We're back on the record at 11:35 a.m.
Did you have a chance to look at the IARC publication you sent us?
Yes, I did.
And did you have you wanted to comment on that, I think?
So just re-ask your question and I can answer it now that I have the document open. I just couldn't hold the whole document in my memory. If you don't mind, sir.
Sure, let me go ahead and make that an exhibit. The IARC table 4. We will make that exhibit. Is this 6, Madam Court Reporter?
Exhibit 6.
Yeah, all right. 6 is IARC carcinogen by cancer site, table 4, that was provided to us last night pursuant to our notice to produce. Yes, sir. Go ahead. You.
So I think so if you don't mind, just re-ask the question. I'll
Sure.
Have the document open. That'd be great.
Sorry. Do you mind reading back just the last question before the break?
One moment. The last question was, so that goes to when you testified earlier under oath today, when we started your deposition today, that you were prepared to give your full and final testimony here today. You were not prepared to testify about a document you sent over to me last night pursuant to our notice to produce. Is that right?
So the answer is no. I just needed to refer to the document. And so if you could just re-ask the question that you'd like me to answer from this document, that would be great.
Well, I believe we were talking about exhibit 5 to your deposition, which is table 6D of the 6th edition of Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, page 135. And we were talking about formaldehyde, and that being a presumed carcinogen pursuant to table 6D. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And then we were talking about lymphoma and leukemia and whether formaldehyde is a presumed carcinogenic cause of those disease processes. And right?
Right.
All right. And you wanted to pull up the IARC to refresh your recollection about something, I believe.
Correct.
All right. And have you had an opportunity to do that?
Yes.
And what would you like to share in that regard?
Well, I thought the question you were asking was, does the IARC list formaldehyde as a carcinogen for particular types of cancers? And that's why I wanted to refer to the table.
Sure. And yes. Okay. And your answer to that question is?
So yes, it is listed. It is listed here.
All right.
From the table that I provided, formaldehyde is listed by the IARC as associated with sufficient evidence in humans for other acute lymphocytic leukemia and chronic myeloid leukemia.
Right. And I was just going to, I believe you corrected it just for the record. According to the IARC, that's a carcinogenic agent with sufficient evidence in humans, right?
Right, right. And again, I wanted to refer to the table. I didn't want to not be right about that.
I understand. So we'll pull back up. We were, when we broke, looking at table 6D from the 6th edition of Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, which was marked as Exhibit 5. And I'm going to go ahead and, while we're having this colloquy, and make Exhibit 7 the same Exhibit 6D to the 7th edition of Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, which is at page 137. We'll mark that as Exhibit 7. All right. Let's go back to. Now this is, can you see that?
I do.
And this is the Exhibit 5, your deposition that we were discussing before the break, is it not?
I didn't get the question there. Say it again.
Yeah, this is the same document we were talking about when we broke, right?
Okay. Right. Yes. Yeah.
Table 6D, carcinogens with possible occupational relevance, substances known to be carcinogenic, substances that may reasonably be assumed to be carcinogenic, page 135, right?
Right.
And we were talking about formaldehyde, right?
Correct.
See that in the second column?
I see it.
Can you
Yes.
agree that that is not only a presumed carcinogen, but also a presumed carcinogen for cancers, lymphoma, and leukemia?
Yes, based on the IARC.
The IARC table 4 that you sent me last night.
Correct.
And then beneath that, you see where it reads, it starts 4,4, methylene, dianiline, and it's dihydrochloride, methyl. Do you see that?
Can you put your cursor on it?
Sure. I'll make this larger. You see where it reads 4,4,
Yeah, I see that.
methylene, dianiline, and it's dihydrochloride, methyl. Do you see that?
I see it.
All right. And that is also a presumed carcinogen.
According to this table, I'm not familiar with the compound.
Yeah, but you agree that this is per the table in the Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene?
Yes.
This
Yes.
is the book that you've got on your website where the section that is for expert testimony, right?
Yes.
And that's also, do you know the abbreviation for that compound?
I don't know that I know that. No.
All right. Are you aware that Demetrius Phillips was exposed to that during the course of his employment at Trimac Transportation?
Not specifically aware.
What about generally?
No.
Do you know how that is formed?
No.
What it's made of?
I'm not familiar with this.
All right.
this compound.
If we still exhibit 5, we go to the third column, the assumed to be carcinogenic. You see where it reads polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons such as benzanthracene and benzopyrene.
I do.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
And you're aware that Demetrius Phillips was exposed to that as well? Don't know.
I don't know what his exposures were.
Okay. And you agree that that's also assumed to be carcinogenic?
Yes.
All right. Which means, and by carcinogenic, we mean causes cancer, right? Yes?
Yes, presumed in this case.
Yes. And beneath that, you see tetrachloroethylene. You see that
Yes.
right here? You see my cursor, right?
I see it. Yep.
And you agree that that too is a presumed carcinogen.
Agreed.
And you agree that carcinogen and carcinogenic agent are the same thing, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that means cancer causing, right?
Right.
Whether it's a known cause of cancer or presumed cause of cancer, right?
The question you're asking me is, are we using the word carcinogen and whether it's no?
Yeah, what I want to make sure is that you agree that carcinogenic and carcinogen, you know, when we use those words, we're talking about causing cancer, right?
Whether it's presumed, yes. Whether it's presumed or no.
Right, whether it's presumed or known, that's what we're talking about.
Agreed. Agreed.
Do you have a preference whether we talk about carcinogenic or a carcinogen, a noun?
No, I don't have a preference.
All right. So you're unaware of that as well, the tetrachloroethylene. Unaware of the exposure.
I am unaware of his exposure.
All right, I'm going to go through some chemicals. I want you to tell me whether you understand that Demetrius Phillips was exposed to these. Are you aware that he was exposed to benzene? What are you looking at?
I'm not looking at anything. I'm thinking. As I am unaware of his specific exposures, I just want to get a format for these answers so that I don't stumble through this
Sure,
list
that's
here.
fine.
As you know, I don't know specifically what Mr. Phillips was exposed to, so
I don't have any idea. All right.
let's just go through it. Do it your way, because I
Sure,
can't
sure,
think of a better
sure.
way.
Well,
Go ahead.
that's you don't know what Demetrius Phillips was exposed to, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And now you didn't speak with anyone over the course of the break about your deposition testimony today, did you?
No, I did not.
Have you spoken with any lawyers about this case other than Matthew Gettinger and Michael Rossetti?
No.
You're unaware whether Demetrius Phillips was exposed to benzene.
Correct.
Don't know whether he was exposed to formaldehyde.
Correct.
Don't know whether he was exposed to MDI.
Correct.
Don't know whether he was exposed to TDI.
Correct.
And do you know what MDI is?
Yes.
Okay. And MDI is methylene diisocyanate, right?
Correct.
TDI
Yes.
is toluene diisocyanate, right?
Correct.
You're unaware whether he was exposed to naphtha over the course of his employment?
I don't know his specific exposures.
All right. So you don't know whether he was exposed to naphtha over the course of his 13 years at Trimac?
Correct.
All right. And You don't know whether he was exposed to nitric acid over the course of his 13 years at Trimac.
Correct.
You don't know whether he was exposed to styrene over the course of his employment at Trimac.
Correct.
You don't know whether he was exposed to sulfuric acid over the course of his employment at Trimac.
Correct.
You don't know whether he was exposed to tetrachloroethylene over the course of his employment at Trimac, 13 years.
Correct.
You don't know whether he was exposed to phosphoric acid over the course of his 13-year employment at Trimac.
Correct.
You don't know whether he was exposed to lupronate over the course of his employment at Trimac.
Correct.
You know what lupronate is?
I don't know what that is.
All right. You don't know whether he was exposed to diamine diphenyl methane over the course of his employment.
No, I do not.
Bonnie, if you want, I'll get you this. If counsel, if you don't object, if Bonnie, if you want to call me, I can help with these chemicals.
Much appreciated.
And toluene diamine.
Correct.
All right. And you agree that benzene is a known carcinogen?
Yes.
You agree that formaldehyde is a known carcinogen?
Yes.
You agree that MDI is a known carcinogen?
I'm going to refer to the IARC list on that.
You what?
I am going to refer to the IARC
Sure.
list
That's fine.
that we have here. I'm still looking through the list. I don't recall MDI as a known carcinogen, and that's why I'm looking through this list here.
All right. Well, I think if
I
you
don't,
don't,
and I don't see it here.
that's fine. If you don't know or don't recall, you can answer that way. We'll go back through those SDSs for the ones that you don't know. How about that?
Fair enough.
All right. So MDI, well, do you agree MDI is a presumed carcinogen? And if you
I don't know that.
and what about TDI, toluene diisocyanate? Sir?
My recollection on TDI is that they're I'm not going to, let me just find it.
Sure, take your time.
I'm not seeing TDI on the IARC list. My recollection is that there may be some limited animal carcinogenicity data for TDI, but that's just from memory.
All right.
And I don't recall specifically. So my answer is I don't recall.
That's fine. And when you agree that, do you have any reason to dispute the SDSs or formerly the MSDSs when it comes to the carcinogenicity of these chemicals?
As you know, safety data sheets are written by various organizations with various levels of expertise. So I don't have a wholesale agreement or disagreement on anything. So it would just, I would just have to rely on what's there.
All right. And naphtha, I'd like for you to, that is a known carcinogen, presumed carcinogen, or you don't know? Naphtha.
The reason that I'm delaying in answering your question, Mr. Potts, is because naphtha is often sort of a general, depends on what you mean by naphtha.
Sure.
It's generally a mixture of petroleum products, naphthalene, and some other, similarly named chemicals are different than naphtha. So I wasn't quite sure what you're referring to. So I would have to just refer to some specific list that you're referring to. I don't want to sort of make a general statement there.
And let me see if I can't You know what an inorganic acid is?
Acids that don't contain carbon.
You know what sulfuric acid is?
Yes,
Is that an inorganic or an organic acid?
inorganic.
And you agree that sulfuric acid is an inorganic acid?
Yes,
You agree that phosphoric acid is an inorganic acid?
yes,
You agree nitric acid is an inorganic acid?
agreed.
And if you look back at Exhibit 5, you see this table 6D, page 135 of Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, the 6th edition. Down here at the bottom, it reads, occupational exposure associated with a technological process that are known to be carcinogenic. Do you see that where it reads known
Yes.
to be carcinogenic?
Yes,
Do you agree that nitric acid, sulfuric acid, and phosphoric acid, particularly when in the form of a mist, are known to be carcinogenic, right?
that's not what I interpret that statement, that part of the table. No, I don't agree with that. I don't think that the way you're describing this is what is meant by that category in the table.
All right, so tell me, just cite.
Can
for
you
me-
zoom out? Can you zoom out, please?
Let me finish, sir. Go ahead. No, if you were still answering the question, that's fine.
No, I was wrong. I shouldn't have I should not have interjected there. Sorry.
All right. Let's see. What I'd like for you to do is cite for me any treatise, textbook, chapter in a textbook, peer-reviewed article, non-peer-reviewed article, anything that you're aware of that suggests that nitric acid, sulfuric acid, and phosphoric acid, particularly when they're in a mist, are not known carcinogens. Anything.
Exhibit 6.
All right.
So the IARC list that we've been referring to.
Yeah.
uh,
IARC. Hold on. Let me pull that up for everybody. Table 4 that you sent over, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And what portion?
I don't see those acids listed here.
Well, these are, well, hold on. This table is a classification by cancer site, right? This is not all known or even presumed carcinogenic chemicals, right?
This is the IARC cancer list just sorted by site, I believe.
Well, you're suggesting that all known or presumed carcinogens are in table 4 of the IARC carcinogen by cancer site, table 4. Is that right?
I am saying that I am unaware, directly to your question, I am unaware of sulfuric acid or nitric acid as being listed as carcinogens.
Yes, sir. But my question was a little different. And based on your last, what you last testified to, you suggested, I thought that this, I think it's a 14-page document published by the IARC, list all known and presumed carcinogens. Is that your testimony?
As I recall, from my recollection, when I generated this for you, I thought that this list was a sorted list, not by chemical compound, but by site. And so my impression is that this, I'm not able to speak to the exhaustivity of this list because I didn't generate it, but that's my general impression.
All right, and who generated it?
Well, it's the IARC list, but I
Gotcha. I don't know what you meant by that. All right, we've been going a little over a couple hours. Why don't we'll break for lunch? How long is an hour long enough for lunch?
Whatever works for the team. I'm
Gentlemen, Bonnie, how long would you like for lunch? I'm gonna have to eat. I've got this maniacal trainer at daybreak, so I'm gonna have to eat.
Why don't we do 1 hour?
What's that?
Why don't we do 1 hour? Come back.
Sounds
about,
good. Sounds good. I'll
1.
see you. I'm sorry. Say again, please.
About 10 after 1.
Yes, sir. See you then.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yep.
Going off the record at 12:06 p.m. We're back on the record at 1:11 p.m.
So I believe you testified before the break that you don't have any idea what carcinogenic chemicals Demetrius Phillips was exposed to in his 13 or so years at Trimac.
Yeah, I don't have his exposure records. I don't have that information yet.
Yes, sir. And we looked at Exhibit 5, which is from the 6th edition. Let's pull it back up. Which is from the 6th edition of Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene. And toluene diisocyanate is in the presumed carcinogenic section, right?
Yes.
And so that is a presumed carcinogen. True?
I accept it from the list.
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, this is the text you've got on your website, right?
Yes, I accept it from the list.
All right. And then if we bring up Exhibit 7. This is from the 7th edition. I don't see many differences. One difference, do you see this is Exhibit 7 of your deposition, which is Table 60 from the 7th edition of Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene, page 137. And it looks like formaldehyde this time has made it to the top of the page, which is a known carcinogen, right?
Right.
All right. So you agree that as of 2020, that formaldehyde is a known carcinogenic.
Yeah, I accept that.
All right. When we broke, you were also looking at what we previously marked as Exhibit 6, which is IARC Table 4 that you sent yesterday. I believe it's your testimony that this includes all known carcinogens. Is that right?
What I said was that
Yes, sir.
what I testified was that this, to my impression, was their sorting of the compounds by cancer site for the ones that they think they have sufficient or limited evidence in humans.
Yes, sir.
Right. But it's just sorted differently from
Right.
on the list.
Well, what this is, my understanding is, to the extent that you can tell, or link certain chemical exposure to certain cancers, they tried to do that in that table. Is that right?
I think that's fair. I think that's
Yeah.
what it seems to me.
And there are a number of known and presumed or carcinogens that no one necessarily knows how they contribute to or cause specific cancers. Is that right?
I think you're drawing me out beyond what I can really.
Sure. All right,
Yeah,
that's
I don't really
outside,
feel comfortable answering that question.
because that's outside your area of expertise.
I think it is.
Yes, sir. And have you come across any treatise, textbook, chapter in a textbook, peer-reviewed article, non-peer-reviewed article, anything where you've got someone, a workman, for instance, that's going into confined spaces with a number of carcinogenic chemicals, including benzene, formaldehyde, MDI, TDI, naphtha, nitric acid, styrene, sulfuric acid, tetrachloroethylene, phosphoric acid, lupronate, diaminophenylethane, toluene diamine, to name a few.
Object to form.
I heard the list of chemicals, but what was the fundamental question?
Sure, thank you. The fundamental question is, are you aware of any literature, whether a treatise, a textbook, a chapter in a textbook, a peer-reviewed article, a non-peer-reviewed article, a publication of any sort that deals with someone being in a confined space with over a dozen chemicals that are either known carcinogenic chemicals or presumed carcinogenic chemicals?
Object to form.
The answer.
I don't think that I have read any specific paper that deals with confined space in that particular list of chemicals, if that's what you're aiming at.
Well, and not specifically, even generally. Are you aware of any publications generally where that deal with humans being exposed to a number of carcinogens in confined spaces?
Object to form.
You may answer.
I'm sorry, Mr. Potts. The question is not entirely understood, but can you rephrase it? It seems like it has a lot of subparts to that. I'm not getting it. I'm not getting the question.
You agree this case deals with chemical exposure,
Yes.
and that Demetrius Phillips was exposed to a number of chemicals?
I don't know what his exposures were.
Yes, sir, but you know he was exposed to chemicals.
I know that the work that they did involved chemicals that were previously in vehicles. Yes.
Yes, sir. And he was exposed to a number of chemicals that are either known or presumed carcinogenic chemicals.
Object to form. It's been asked and answered.
You may answer.
I don't know what his exposures were, but if you're giving me a hypothetical, I can accept any hypothetical that you'd like me to have, but I have not seen his exposure. I've not been provided that yet.
Did you speak with anyone over the lunch break about your deposition here today,
No,
or about this case?
no.
Did anyone approach you to speak to you about it? What? I couldn't hear you.
No.
So you're not really prepared to deal with the chemicals that were in these truck tanks today?
Yeah, I've not been provided with any of that information yet. That I'm waiting for that I don't have yet.
Yes, sir. Do you know what acute toxicity is?
Yes,
And are you aware that Demetrius Phillips was exposed to a number of chemicals that are acutely toxic?
Back to the form.
Let me answer.
I think that most industrial chemicals have an acute toxicity to them
Yes, sir.
if exposed at the right levels. I think that's a general statement.
Are you familiar with methyl acrylate?
Broadly,
You agree that is carries an acute toxicity?
I would need to look it up specifically. I don't want to comment on something I haven't.
So as you sit here, you don't know.
I've not researched that compound in preparation for this deposition. I don't know whether he's exposed to that or not, and I don't have that toxicology on top of my head right now.
Yeah, that methyl acrylate is one of the chemicals that Demetrius was exposed to, and you don't know whether it's acutely toxic though, or has an acute toxicity to it.
Object to
Back to the
form.
form.
Give me an answer.
I think I've answered that question in the general sense that I would not, that, many industrial and chemicals that are hazardous have both acute and chronic health effects.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir. And I'm not asking you about many chemicals now. I'm asking you about methyl acrylate. And if you don't know,
if you'd like me to look it up and
Sure, look it up.
specific, that would be something that
yeah, you're welcome.
we can do that, but where do you, I'm just trying to cooperate. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're welcome to look it up. Go ahead. Where are you going to look?
I don't know. I mean, I can look, what do you want to know?
I want to know whether methyl acrylate has acute toxicity.
What do you mean by acute toxicity?
Well, are you familiar with NIOSH?
Yes,
And what is NIOSH?
the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health,
Yes, sir. And that's a division of what?
Department of Health and Human Services.
The Centers for the CDC, right?
Right, yeah, well, yeah, under HHS.
Yeah. And are you familiar with NIOSH's definition of acute toxicity?
I imagine it has something to do with the LC50, the LC50 number or the LD50 number. I don't have the actual definition in my head.
Do you know whether butyl acrylate is acutely toxic?
I don't have that in my head right now. So the answer is
All right. No. Formaldehyde, do you know whether that carries an acute toxicity?
Yeah, I would say it does.
All right. And styrene, that carries an acute toxicity.
I know that there are acute health effects associated with it, as well as probably chronic.
Right. Styrene's also carcinogen, a known carcinogen.
I would need to check that.
Right. where would you check? that?
Right now, I'm just going to what exhibit number, I guess it's 6 that we've been dealing with from IARC.
That's, yeah, I believe it's exhibit 6 to your deposition.
Yeah, so under, I guess on page 13 of 14 of that exhibit,
Yes,
styrene is listed as a chemical that is associated with limited evidence in humans for lymphoma.
yes, sir. And you're not aware, you don't know about Demetrius Phillips' exposure to styrene over the course of
That's
his
correct.
was cleaning those truck tanks. All right.
That's
And
correct.
toluene, you agree that that carries an acute toxicity?
Yes,
Xylene,
yes,
1,2,4-trimethylbenzene.
I'm not specifically familiar with it, but I would imagine that it probably does, but I'm not specifically, I don't have that tox in my head.
All right. Benzene,
Yes,
naphtha.
it makes sense that it would.
Yes, sir. Caustic,
A broad construct, but generally speaking, bases have acute toxicity.
yes, sir. Ammonia,
Yes,
diethylene, triamine, DITA.
not fully familiar with the tox on that.
All right. Monoethanol, amine,
Same answer as the previous one,
sure. Phosphoric acid,
certainly,
sulfuric acid,
certainly,
hydrofluoric acid,
yes,
methylene diphenyl diisocyanate, MDI,
yes,
toluene diisocyanate, TDI,
yes,
MDA diamino diphenyl methane, MDA.
I'm not really familiar with the tox on that.
Yes, sir. And toluene diamine, TDA.
Not specifically familiar with the tox on that at this point.
All right. And do you know the target organs for these chemicals? The target organs?
For some and probably not for all.
All right. And there's a, have you ever had a case that involved a Ventus Pro sensor?
Those are the air monitors that they used at the site there. Am I correct? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
I don't recall a case involving that particular instrumentation.
Well, have you ever, do you have any experience with that specific instrumentation other than in this case?
No, I'm not familiar with that that particular brand.
All right. You're aware that the Ventus Pro sensor does not detect any of these chemicals. Is that right?
Objective form.
So the answer to that is not specifically no or yes. I think that that's something that we should probably, would have to unfold a little bit.
You should say that again, please.
I think that answer is complex. So it's not a simple yes or no as I read, so I'm happy to talk to you
Sure.
about any questions you have specific to that, I think.
All right. Venice Pro does not detect methyl acrylate. True?
There was not a methyl acrylate sensor that I saw there when we were on site.
Well, not only was there no methyl acrylate sensor on the site, a Ventus Pro, the sensor on the site, does not detect methyl acrylate.
Objective form.
You may answer.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. I need to look up methyl acrylate to
Sure.
get something about its
Okay.
characteristics.
All right, take your time. Go ahead and look.
So I'm just so methyl acrylate is a flammable. It's a flammable liquid. It has a lower explosive limit of 2.8% in air and an upper explosive limit of 25% in air. So one of the sensors that is built into what they were using for their air monitoring
Ventus Pro. The Ventus Pro.
Was a they were measuring oxygen, they were measuring percent of the lower explosive limit. They were and so as a flammable material, the meter that does explosive gases would have the capacity to estimate levels of, if methyl acrylate were in the tank as a flammable material, it would have the potential to be picked up by that instrument.
So your testimony under oath today is that the Ventus Pro sensor does detect methyl acrylate.
Well, it detects flammable gases across a broad range. And so that's why I thought it was important to sort of unfold this a little bit. My impression of the what I saw about, with the Ventus Pro system there is that yes, it measures oxygen levels, it measures flammable materials as a percent of the lower explosive limit, which is a broader category, and it would pick up flammable materials as a percentage of the lower explosive limit. It also did measurements, as I recall, of hydrogen sulfide. I believe it also measured ammonia, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yeah. So, and your testimony under oath is that a Ventus Pro sensor, the one they had at Trimac, will detect methyl acrylate because of its detection of certain flammable chemicals. Is that right?
As from the information that I just quickly pulled up here, my testimony is that for flammable materials like methyl acetate, one would expect that there would be
It's not acetate, it's acrylate, methyl.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right, methyl acrylate. That the instrument has a potential to pick up that as it's doing flammable, as it's doing its percent, its flammability measurements, along with many other flammable materials.
Yes, sir. My question wasn't about potential. I want to know whether, in your view, if you know.
I think I've answered the question as best I can.
No, sir, you haven't. I want to know whether a Venice probe will detect methyl acrylate. And if you're telling me it will, I want you to cite to me any treatise, textbook, chapter in a textbook, peer-reviewed article, Ventus Pro, package insert, anything in the history of the solar system that suggests that it can.
Object to
Object to
form.
form.
It has been asked and answered.
You may answer.
To the extent.
Hmm. The way that combustible gas meters work, and I did not look this up specifically in the Ventus Pro literature, but generally the way that combustible gas indicators work is they have a detector in them called the Wheatstone bridge. And the Wheatstone bridge works by comparing resistance along circuit that changes with temperature as flammable gases or vapors are passed over that sensor. And the change in resistance is proportionate to the concentration of those flammable materials. The response curve, if you will, for various materials varies across various ranges of materials, but as an instrument that's used for screening, generally for confined spaces and confined space entry, that type of sensor is designed to sort of provide a response to a wide range of flammable materials. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Well, that's what I'm trying to communicate. And so that answer would be, similar for lots of flammable materials that might be used in that monitoring. The curve, the response curve, it would vary, and the levels that it's able to measure are getting to the levels that would take you to some percentage of the flammable limit and the flammable range. So that's the answer. I hope that that's helpful.
Objection moved to strike is non-responsive. Does the Venice Pro sensor detect formaldehyde?
I don't believe it would.
Does the Venice Pro detector detect styrene?
Same answer as for methyl acrylate.
Does the Venice Pro detector detect toluene?
That's a similar answer as the one for methyl acrylate.
Does the Venice Pro sensor detect xylene?
Same answer.
Trimethylbenzene?
I would think it's in that same category.
Benzene?
Yes.
Naphtha?
I would put naphtha likely in the same category as it responds to it in its flammable range.
Caustic?
I would say no.
DETA?
Say it again.
DETA? Diethylene, triamine, DETA? I'm not sure, but I would lean against probably
more likely no, but I'm not certain.
Phosphoric acid,
No,
hydrofluoric acid,
no,
sulfuric acid,
no.
methylene diisocyanates,
No, I don't believe so. No,
TDI,
I would think no.
MDA,
I'm not sure.
TDA.
Not sure.
All right. Madam Court Reporter, what exhibit are we on, please?
The last one was number 7.
Thank you. I'm going to show you what has been previously marked as Exhibit 8 to your deposition. This is the confined space entry manual for Trimac. Have you reviewed that before today?
I have not.
All right, if someone's going into a semi-truck tank with toluene diisocyanate, for example, and they're told that a Ventus Pro will detect whether there's a dangerous level of toluene diisocyanate or TDI, is that a true statement?
Check to form.
You may answer.
As I see, as based on what I saw when we were on site, I would not expect that instrument to detect TDI at the levels that would be of concern.
Objection, move to strike is non-responsive. My question is this, can you hear me all right?
Oh, I hear you fine. Yeah, I hear you.
A Ventus Pro will not detect TDI, true?
I don't think it will. Yes, I agree. I
So
don't think it will.
So if Demetrius Phillips were told that if you use the Ventus Pro sensor and lower it into the truck tank before going in with TDI, and he's told that that will alert him whether it's safe to go in or whether there's a dangerous level of TDI, that statement would be false.
Check the form.
You may answer.
There are two suppositions in your statement. The last part I agree with because as I saw that Ventus Pro, I don't think that I didn't see a TDI. I'm not aware. I should say it this way. I am not aware of what sensors are actually installed in those instruments, but it's not my impression based on the site visit that there is a sensor specific to TDI in those, and I'm not aware of a sensor that would detect that. Right. So that's I don't think that it could. My impression is that it would not be able to detect TDI specifically.
Right. So if he were told that the sensor would detect TDI specifically, then that would be a false statement.
Object to form.
You may answer.
I agree with that. I agree with your statement there.
And if Demetrius Phillips and others like Demetrius were told that as long as that Ventus Pro sensor did not alarm or alert them that it was dangerous before they went into a TDI tank, that too would be false.
Object to form.
I agree with that statement for the context of whether or not the levels of TDI in the tank exceed an OSHA permissible exposure limit. I agree with that.
And did you make any computations about how much of these acutely toxic and carcinogenic chemicals it would take to be dangerous in a truck tank?
I didn't make any computations there.
All right. And do you know how many gallons of chemicals these semi-truck tanks hold?
I don't have that number in my head.
Can you tell me within 1,000 gallons how much they hold?
No, I don't have that information in my head.
Can you tell me within 5,000 gallons how much they hold?
I don't have that information in my head.
So I want you to, if they hold, 5,000 or 6,000 gallons, do you know the difference in a permissible limit and IDHL?
Permissible exposure limit and immediately dangerous to life or health atmosphere. Those are the two you're referring to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know the difference in those two, right?
Yes.
And those are terms of art that are, that are in the federal regulations, the OSHA regulations. True.
Permissible exposure limits are in the OSHA regulations, and IDLH is published commonly by NIOSH and other agencies as well that deal with really short-term, acute hazards. So I'm very familiar with them.
Right, and those are those can be computed.
Those are published. Maybe restate your question.
Sure. Yeah. What's published is the permissible limit and the IDHL, right?
Right.
And for a confined space like a semi-truck tank, you can compute the permissible limit and the IDHL.
You can compute the exposure level, if that's what you're asking.
Right. And once you compute that exposure level, you can tell whether it's above or below the permissible limit.
Correct.
And you can also tell whether it's above or below the IDHL, right?
Yes.
All right. So for toluene diisocyanate to be an immediate danger to life and health in a 6,000 gallon truck tank is less than 4 ounces, right?
I would have to compute that. I haven't computed it.
And one thing, although Venice Pro won't tell you how much toluene diisocyanate or TDI is in a semi-truck tank, it will tell you what the oxygen level is, right?
Right.
So if you wear a Ventus Pro sensor into a semi-truck tank and it doesn't sound there's enough oxygen in that semi-truck tank for you to breathe, right?
Typically those, and I say typically because broadly speaking, the meters that are used for entry, those would have an alarm that would sound probably at less than 19.5% oxygen, which is the level that OSHA would consider to be oxygen deficient.
Yes, sir. Correct. So if you're inside a semi-truck tank, which you agree that's a confined space, right?
Yes.
And your Ventus Pro sensor begins to alarm, then is the oxygen level in that confined space, that semi-truck tank, going up or down?
There's typically multiple alarm positions on that. It might be the oxygen meter, it might be the flammability meter, And the lower limit alarm is typically, though I've not, in this case, yet verified that, but I assume it's typically set to alarm at either less than 19.5% or more than 23% oxygen. So, not having been there to see exactly what's going on, that could, it could be one of those two scenarios.
So you're saying the oxygen sensor may have gone off because there was too much oxygen in the truck tank? Is that your testimony?
No, you're giving me a hypothetical that I don't know. I'm just saying there's two sets of alarms on there.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm just talking about the oxygen sensor now.
I am too. I'm saying there's on the oxygen, there's two alarms,
Uh-huh.
a low alarm and a high alarm.
Right. And have you ever heard of a human being who exhales oxygen and inhales carbon dioxide or CO2?
Nope.
Okay. Why would the oxygen level, if someone's in a confined space breathing, as a human would, increase the CO2 level or decrease the CO2 level and increase the oxygen level? Explain to me how that could possibly happen.
Well, it does happen in confined spaces where they're adding either if there's welding going on and there's oxyacetylene welding going on and you're actually bringing oxygen in, or if oxygen is being introduced into the space. I think that it's more likely than not in the scenario that you're describing that if you had an oxygen alarm, it's probably more likely than not that it would be a low oxygen alarm than an upper, but both are possible. And it also, kind of depends on, no, strike that. I think it's more likely in the scenario you're describing, unless they were doing bringing oxygen into the tank for some work that they were doing in there, that it would more likely than not be a low alarm. But both are possible. I was just trying to explain it.
You agree that you could have, if you gave a dog a bowl of food, you could lace it with enough poison to kill it, right?
Objective form.
You may answer.
You're taking me outside of my expertise. Is that a lay question?
Can you not answer the question?
I wouldn't know how much poison to put in a dog's bowl to kill him.
Yeah, I didn't ask you how much.
Can you re-ask the question then?
Sure. If you fed an animal, let's assume it's a dog, and you've got a bowl of dog food for that dog. There, you could put enough poison in that bowl of dog food to kill that animal. Can you not?
Objective form.
If you don't know, you don't know.
I guess conceivably, yes.
All right.
Sure.
And similarly, if you're in a confined space, forget about the welding for the moment. You've got a human in a confined space. There can be enough oxygen in that atmosphere for that human to breathe, and also enough poison in that same atmosphere to kill that human, that person.
There can be enough oxygen.
Doctor, objective form, now you can answer.
You may answer.
There can be enough oxygen in the tank and still have dangerous levels of other chemicals in it. Yes, that can happen.
Yes, sir. And if you've got a chemical that'll kill you, like TDI, toluene diisocyanate, and oxygen too, and someone goes in with the, because they're told falsely that as long as there's enough oxygen in there to breathe, that TDI is not going to kill you or harm you, then that would be a problem, right?
Objective form, you can answer.
I agree with the concept that you are trying to describe, that is, oxygen is just one of the elements of, atmospheric monitoring in a confined space.
And what's the concept I'm trying to describe?
I think the concept you're trying to describe is just because there's enough oxygen there doesn't mean that, that the atmosphere does not contain other things that could be dangerous.
Right.
I
It
agree
can
with
be, there can be oxygen and it can still be unsafe.
Yes,
There can be oxygen and it can still be dangerous.
yes,
There can be oxygen and you could still have a carcinogenic chemical.
yes,
There can be oxygen and you can still have an acutely toxic chemical.
yes.
All right. Back to exhibit. What number? I apologize, Bonnie. Do you know what number this is?
Number 8.
Number 8. Number 8. Have you not seen this before today?
I have not. I have not.
All right. Well, humor me. You have any idea why you weren't shown this?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't have an answer.
You see where it reads 2.6.3 at the bottom of page 12 of exhibit 8?
I do.
And the title is atmospheric testing. Do you see that?
Yes.
What does atmosphere mean?
Air. For the sake of argument, let's just call it air testing.
sir.
That's what I
And
believe.
that's a satisfactory definition for me. Reference section 3.3 atmospheric testing frequency. Do you see that?
I do.
Atmospheric testing using a calibrated direct reading instrument must be conducted prior to confined space entry. You see that?
I do.
You agree with that?
Yes.
And you would have to test the atmosphere before going into confined space, for instance, a semi-truck tank.
I agree.
See 2.6.3b on page 13. Direct reading instruments are limited to the sensor types installed for detection of other hazardous substances than appropriate gas detector tubes must be used. You see that?
I do.
You know what a gas detector tube is?
I do.
And what is a gas detector tube?
I assume from the reading of that they're referring to something like a colorimetric detector tube.
Yes, sir. Well, you're talking about a panel, or there you can have a physical tube. You can also have a sheet that would change color to reflect a chemical in the atmosphere, right?
I don't know about a sheet, but that's basically how the tubes work. They are colorimetric.
And you said colorimetric, is that right?
Colorimetric.
Colorimetric. So they would change color to let you know. All right. So you
That's
would
correct.
you would use your visual acuity on the tube to tell, whether and how much of the chemical was in the atmosphere.
Right.
And C, direct reading instruments will use remote sampling, is accomplished using an aspirated, parenthetically pumped instrument. Do you see that?
I do.
And what is an aspirated instrument?
So what they're likely referring to here is a pump an instrument that has a pump on it that would draw air from the atmosphere, and in this case, over the colorimetric detector tube, which is clear in color and has a substance inside that would react proportionate in length to the concentration in the air of the material that for which that tube was designed.
Yes, sir. And I know you didn't read any of the 18 or 20 depositions, but according to the testimony in this case, they were never provided with these gas detector tubes as provided in 2.6.3b. So without a gas detector tube, as is required here, how would you test for something like TDI?
Object to form.
You may answer.
Unless you had a colorimetric detector tube system there for TDI, the only other way that I would think that you could test for it is if you had an instrument that was specific for TDI, but I'm not aware of a direct reading instrument that I'm familiar with that would work for that.
And you agree that there are some chemicals that by the time you smell them or sense the odor, you're already over the permissible limit. True?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Carbon monoxide is an example of that.
Absolutely, yeah. And some chemicals, by the time you can smell that chemical, you're already over the IDHL, the immediate danger to life and health. True?
Yeah, I don't have specific examples in my mind, but I know that that can be true.
Well, TDI is one, isn't it?
Probably.
Yeah. All right. Moving right along. Down to page 14. Do you see here where it reads confined space entry permit 3.2?
I do.
You're aware confined space entry permits are required under law, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and those are federal regulations, state laws too, right?
Federal, I don't know about the state laws in Georgia, but the OSHA has a standard for confined space entry and permits.
Yes, sir. And you see here where it reads confined space permits are to be kept on file for 10 years. You see that?
I do.
Is there anything unclear about that document retention policy there at 3.2.1E on page 14?
It does not seem ambiguous to me.
What's your understanding about why we weren't provided those documents and why, and the affidavits that you've not been provided and not read, that those documents were destroyed by Trimac?
Object to form.
Object
You
to
can
form.
answer.
I have no information about that whatsoever.
You hadn't been provided with those documents?
I know, I
Object
don't
to-
have.
Object to form. Go ahead. You can answer that.
I've not been provided with those documents. I don't have them.
What's your understanding about the Ken Cooper's affidavits about the destruction of the those documents?
Object to
I've not
form.
seen his affidavit.
Object to form.
Man.
I have no information about that. I've not seen his affidavit. I have no information about destruction of documents.
Have you ever testified in a case before whether the party you're testifying on behalf of intentionally destroyed documents that pertain to a case?
Object to form.
I don't have an answer. I don't have a recollection of that.
To your knowledge, have you?
I don't have any recollection of that.
All right.
I don't think I would know that, or I certainly don't have any recollection of anything like that.
Uh-huh. Would you have an issue with that?
Object to form.
You may answer.
Would I have an issue is be more specific there.
Sure. I mean, is it as long as you're paid the money, you're going to testify, or if you feel like there's something amiss, i.e. an entity that you're testifying on behalf of is intentionally destroying documents that pertain to a case, that's something you would pass on.
Object
Object
to
to
form.
form.
You may answer.
I've passed. That's a hypothetical. I've not
No,
been in
it's
that.
not. It's a question.
Object to form.
I'm sorry. I consider my role to inform the court on the things that I'm, that I'm able to be qualified to answer, and maybe to shed light upon. But that's what my, that's sort of what I consider my role in cases to be, is to inform based on my expertise. So
wouldn't be an issue for you whether documents are destroyed. Would not be.
Object to form.
You may answer.
Their company, their policy for maintaining permits for 10 years, if that's their policy, they should be evaluated for compliance with their internal policy. That I don't know. I don't know how. If documents have been, destroyed, or why, or what the policy is. So it just seems to me that that would be something that an attorney would need to explore, but I don't feel that I'm qualified to comment on that.
Page 15, you see where 3.2.3 prohibited conditions.
I see it.
It reads here, permits will not be issued if prohibited conditions exist. Prohibited conditions that are encountered during confined space entry, then the permit will be deemed invalid. These events shall be recorded on the permit and submitted to the Health and Safety Committee for review. You see that?
I do.
And who is on the Health and Safety Committee at Trimac Fairburn?
I don't have that information.
All right. Following situations or conditions that are encountered during the confined space entry means permits are revoked and entrance will be required to exit the confined space until cleared for re-entry if applicable. Do you see that?
I do.
See where it reads A, atmospheric hazards outside of acceptable limits.
Yes.
If someone's in a truck tank with TDI and you have no idea what the TDI amount is, how in the world will you know whether it's outside that acceptable limit?
Object to form.
You may answer.
So for the answer is that the answer is I can't answer the question. I don't have an answer to that question. There are elements of work procedures, cleaning, ventilation, and other kinds of things that also impact what the exposure levels are that may be within a tank. There are several factors, but I don't know if I think what I'm struggling with here is I don't know if the limits that they're referring to here are regulatory limits or some policy limits that may be within this document, because I haven't seen it. So I'm not trying to, I can't comment on what I haven't.
Whatever the limit, if you're not measuring the TDI in the atmosphere, you have no way of knowing whether it's outside an acceptable limit, do you?
Yeah, I think that there are real limitations on understanding what the levels are if you're not able to measure them, or if you're not measuring them. Yes.
you see, I'm on page 21 of Exhibit 8. Do you see up here where it reads equipment?
I do.
You see where it reads confined space entries are not permitted in IDLH environments regardless of RPE?
I see that.
What is RPE?
I am assuming that it's referring to respiratory protective equipment, but that's just because of where you are. But I didn't see the definitions in this document.
Yes, sir. And IDLH stands for what?
Immediately dangerous to life and health.
Yes, sir. And there are amounts of TDI in an atmosphere that would be an immediate danger to life and health. True?
Yeah, I don't know what the IDLH level for TDI is off the top of my head. I would need to look it up.
Right. And I didn't ask you what the number was. I just asked you whether there are amounts that are immediately dangerous to life and health.
I would have to look it up to answer that question or not with an affirmative.
Oh, you're not aware even whether there's an amount that would pose an immediate danger to life and health for TDI?
Well, TDI is a respiratory sensitizer. And so very low levels, if people have certain respiratory conditions, can be very, very important. So I'm not sure how they've dealt with that in terms of the PEL versus a ceiling limit versus an IDLH atmosphere level. I'd have to look it up.
Sir, my question, would you read back my question, please, Madam Court Reporter?
Question, you're not aware even whether there's an amount that would pose an immediate danger to life and health for TDI?
Do you understand the question?
I think I understood, and I think I answered it.
So you don't know, as you sit here, whether there's an amount of TDI in the atmosphere that would pose an immediate danger to life and health?
Objective form, it's been asked and answered.
You may answer.
If you're asking me to I don't have the IDLH number in my head for TDI.
I didn't ask for a
can look it
number,
up.
sir. I just want to know whether there's an amount. And if
I would
you
need to
don't
look
know,
at.
let me know you don't know.
I would need to look it up.
Okay, look it up. I'll take a men's room break and I'll be back.
Going off the record at 2:12 p.m.
Dr. Lynch, please mute your computer.
We're back on the record at 2:17 p.m.
Did you find what you were looking for?
Yes. Yep. You ready?
Yes,
Are we
sir.
back? Oh,
Yep.
okay. I'm sorry. I was just waiting.
That's all right. I wasn't, go ahead.
Yeah. So, so I am on the NIOSH pocket guide site. That's where I'm referring to right now.
Yeah.
By NIOSH. And for TDI, it says that the OSHA permissible exposure limit is 0.02 parts per million. The TLV of 0.005 parts per million, And then it refers to an original IDLH level for TDI of 10 parts per million because of that issue I raised about it being a respiratory sensitizer. And for people who have been sensitized, really, really low levels could be really, really dangerous. And then it shows a revised IDLH level, which I think is from 1994, of 2.5 parts per million as an IDLH for TDI based on an acute inhalation toxicity in animals. And again, it says since in sensitized individuals, even concentrations below the OSHA PEL are capable of triggering an allergic response. This is based on animals. So that was worth to me looking up.
All right, let's make whatever you looked at as exhibit 9 to your deposition.
So what I'll do is I'm going to just copy the URL and I'll drop it in the chat.
That'll be fine. Thank you. And so there is an IDHL4 or IDLH. There is an IDLH for TDI.
Yes.
And to know whether you're above or below the IDLH, you have to measure the atmosphere.
Yes.
And
Hang on.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to multitask here. I'm trying to drop this thing in here.
Go ahead.
All right, done.
To know whether you're above or below the IDLH, you have to have a tube.
Yes, that's how you would measure it.
Without that tube, you're not going to know whether you're above or below the immediate danger to life or health.
I think that's fair.
Right. So if somebody like Demetrius Phillips was told to get in a truck tank and clean out the remaining TDI, and he didn't have a tube, and he was told that if the Venice Pro didn't go off, it's safe to go in there, those would be false statements.
Object to form, you can answer.
Let me answer.
Yeah. If that's the hypothetical that he was going into a tank that had liquid TDI in it without monitoring it, that would, I don't think that one would be able to know that answer without monitoring it.
Right. And well, it's not just for liquid TDI. You can have TDI that, TDI reacts with the atmosphere, right? You hear me?
I don't know that I know exactly what you're getting at. I know it typically reacts with.
I don't want you to worry about what I'm getting at. I want you to answer my question truthfully as best you can. All right.
I don't know how it reacts with the atmosphere. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Is TDI water soluble? If you know.
I would need to look it up.
Where would you look?
I would probably, in this case, probably go to the safety data sheet for it.
All right. Just let me know when you get there.
So I attached a safety data sheet for TDI to the documents that I sent up, and I have that open now.
All right.
And I am in section 9 under physical and chemical properties.
Yes, sir.
All right. And it says that for solubility in water, it hydrolyzes to form insoluble compounds. So it reacts. It reacts to form a solid, and it reacts with water. So was that your question? No, what was your question?
That's one of the questions. So is it water soluble?
No, it's water reactive.
All right. And since it's water reactive, that means it reacts with water. Correct?
Right. Right.
So when water is added to it, the surface becomes hard.
Are you asking me a question?
Seriously?
Seriously, I mean, I can't
Sir,
tell
if I'm talking with you at your deposition today, these are questions. Read back your
Correct.
question, please, Madam
Okay.
Reporter.
Object to the form, ask in a formal question.
Read it back, please, ma'am.
Question, so when water is added to it, the surface becomes hard.
I can't answer that. I'm not a chemist here. I don't feel comfortable answering that question one way or the other.
Tell you what's been previously marked as exhibit. Is it 10? Thank you. This is looking into a semi truck tank. That this is what they would look like when Demetrius Phillips went in the semi truck tanks.
Object to the form.
Do you see that?
I see the image you have there. Yes, sir.
Well, do you see, this is looking in through the manhole of a semi truck tank at Trimac.
Object to form.
You may answer. You see it?
I see it.
All
I
right.
see it.
And you didn't read Brad Pierce's deposition?
I did not read. I have not been provided any depositions yet.
Yeah. So you didn't see that they went into truck tanks like this. Is that right?
Object to form.
You may answer.
I have not seen it. I have not seen that deposition.
So semi truck tanks that had chemicals like TDI in them, do you know how they cleaned them?
Not specifically.
All right. What about general?
No, my impression from the site visits when we were there was that liquid, generally speaking, liquid to be removed. there would be a washing, a venting procedure. And my understanding, I think, my impression was that after that was done and you know, they monitor the atmosphere, when people went in, that they needed to sometimes scrape hard, you know, material off of surfaces that might have been left behind. That's my general impression from the site visits that we did in January and February. That's my general impression.
Well, and you also wrote that they were being properly monitored before they went in, right? That's what you sent last night.
That's what I said last night.
That's what you sent last night. That's what you wrote and what you sent over last night in response to our notice to produce.
Oh, you're referring, okay, so.
Right?
I
Remember that? You remember that, right? You wrote that. They were being properly monitored. The atmosphere.
I wrote that, well, I'll see what I wrote.
Sure.
So I see under the section of my notes that say site inspection findings and notes 12922. The second full paragraph there, the last line of that second full paragraph says no tank entry until final rinse, and that should say area, but it says and are monitoring with confined space entry procedures. Is that what you're referring to, sir?
I'll make it an exhibit. You see there, it reads, quote, employee well-trained on monitoring, close.
Oh, down below. Okay, I wasn't looking in the right place. So this is from the 12th. And let me look at that. Right, and my note here was based on during the 12th, you had a person that was showing you around, and there was a point where we went into the monitoring, that office that had that monitoring equipment. And I was, as the person that you brought out was explaining the monitoring equipment to you and to your experts, my impression of him was that he seemed to be quite knowledgeable in how that equipment worked, how it was supposed to work, the way that the system worked. That's what I'm referring to there.
Show you what's marked as plaintiff's exhibit 11 to your deposition. You see that? It reads final Trimac Lynch internal notes redacted. Do you see that?
I see that.
And The word final, that's it, the first word, right?
Yes,
This is your title for the document, right? This is you created this document. You entitled it Final Trimac Lynch Internal Notes Redacted.
I did not redact anything. So I did not.
So somebody added the redacted?
I'm sorry.
Somebody added that word redacted?
That was not mine.
Well, what is this? What has been redacted from this document?
So
We're on page, you see this? Starting at page 4 is redacted in its entirety. Page 5 is redacted in its entirety. Page 6 is redacted in its entirety. Page 8 is redacted in its entirety. Page 9 is redacted in its entirety. I want to know what was redacted from this document.
So it's my impression.
Dr. Lynch, before you answer, I'm objecting to the form of the question. You can speak generally about what was redacted.
You're instructing him not to answer the question?
No, I'm objecting on the grounds that there is privilege in the documents that has been redacted, and he can testify generally about that, but not about the specific information.
You're instructing him not to answer about the
I'm not
information that was
instructing him not to
redacted in his
answer.
report, his final Trimac Lynch notes?
This is not a report. These are his internal notes that he took along with matters that are subject to work product and are not discoverable.
What was redacted, Mr. Lynch?
It looks to me that there were two things redacted. Yeah, it looks
5
like two
pages
things.
were redacted. 5 out of 9 pages. What was redacted?
So I reviewed, I think I provided some information to the attorneys on questions that they may want to consider regarding, well, to help them prepare for depositions that they were preparing for. These were questions that I had, to help them with depositions. And then the second category of things were things that I wanted to receive because I didn't know what the basis of this deposition was going to be about, since I hadn't received any documents. And so just kind of, I believe that some of those redactions are, documents that I may have been asking for to help prepare for it today.
What documents were you asking for that you didn't get?
I'm going to object at this point. Again, these are privileged communications. I'm not going to allow him to answer any further questions about that. If we need to get the judge on the phone, we can do that, and she could do an in-camera inspection if necessary.
But you provided them to the court pursuant to Rule 5.5, did you not?
I didn't hear you, Mr. Potts. I'm sorry.
Sure, you're of course familiar with Uniform Superior and State Court Rule 5.5 that requires a privilege log when you claim privilege.
I also understand that a notice of deposition.
Are you aware of that?
I'm also aware of the fact that a notice of deposition permits 30 days for response. We did it in less than 30 days. And you've been provided with the information that is generally contained in there. You are asking him specific questions about what we communicated about. Again, to the extent that is what a privilege log does, which is to tell generally what is in a document that has been redacted. We have done that. He has done that orally.
That is also inaccurate. A notice to produce, he is not a party to the case. Are you suggesting that he's a party to the case?
No, I'm suggesting.
No, he doesn't have 30 days.
I'm suggesting that a notice to produce requires 30 days of written response.
Before the deposition,
Wait, stop both.
Then he's
Stop both
got to
of you.
provide a privilege law.
No.
Yes.
Again, No, again, he has 30 days to respond to a notice to produce.
That is, give me a cite for that.
That is,
Case, a statute, anything. Yeah, that's funny, all right.
that is in the Civil Practice Act. You have 30
You're
days.
in,
to
you're
file a request for
incorrect. You're
documents
talking
or
about
notice
for a
to
party.
produce. There are other
That's the
mechanisms.
silliest thing
in
I've ever
documents.
heard.
Mr.
You
Potts,
showed me.
I'm happy to take this conversation to the judge if you
No,
want to
you
know the
show me.
specific
You
details,
show
but I
me.
told you generally
He
what
said
is
he's
in
not
the
complying
document.
with Rule 5.5 because he's got 30 days and he's not a party.
And he's
Judge
showing
Judge
you
Mitchell
what
seemed to
is
think
generally
that.
in the documents.
No, sir, you show me.
Hey, stop. I can't do this with everybody screaming at once. So one at a time.
My apologies, ma'am. My apologies. This is.
You show me where a non-party has 30 days to respond to a notice to produce, Mr. Rossetti. I'm waiting.
There is, the Civil Practice Act gives a party or a non-party who is served with a notice to produce 30 days to respond.
Show me that statute.
I will be happy to.
I'll wait.
I'm not doing
I'll
this
wait.
right now because I am not being deposed. What I will say to you is we produced the
Well, let's
document.
get the judge on the phone then. Go
That's
ahead.
fine. That is fine. I'm not getting the judge
Your
on the phone. If you
prerogative.
want to get the judge on the phone to ask
Well,
about
fine.
what specifically was redacted, I will be here to, I will have that conversation.
I'd like to add that you have reserved 4 hours of Dr. Lynch's time.
Add
so
whatever you want, man. Let me get the judge.
there you go. Sure.
Mr. Potts, I need exhibit 10, the photograph also.
To leave a voicemail, press 1 or wait for the tone.
Hi, Debbie. This is James Potts. I'm in the middle of a deposition in the Phillips v. Trimac matter. And we've been provided with documents pursuant to a notice to produce to a non-party. And of course, USCR Rule 5.5 requires when they claim privilege that they provide a privilege log to the court, which they've not done. Mr. Rossetti suggests that although Mr. Lynch is not a party, that he still has 30 days to respond to a notice to produce, which is of course tantamount to a subpoena, which is inaccurate. And this is the same argument they made when Judge Boehm was out of town. With all due deference, I need to speak to the judge at her earliest possible convenience, ideally while we've still got Mr. Lynch in his deposition here today. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Rossetti or Mr. Gettinger?
Be happy to have this conversation with Your Honor when she's available. Yes.
Mr. Gettinger?
Second, Mr. Rossetti.
All right, thank you so much. Bye-bye. All right, so you're refusing to answer those questions, Mr. Lynch?
I'm not refusing anything. I'm just obeying here.
You're obeying. Well, Mr. Rossetti doesn't represent you, does he? You say, is he your lawyer? Or are you a witness in the case? Mr.
I
Lynch?
just, he doesn't represent me. I'm not a party to the case.
All right,
So
then what I'd like to know is, why you haven't provided a privilege log and why you have over half the 9-page document redacted.
I didn't redact anything. I didn't make any decision to redact anything. That's not my decision. That's not my doing.
Who redacted this stuff?
I assume it was, the attorneys that provided it to the link.
So they didn't speak with you about redacting this stuff before they redacted it?
Object.
You may answer.
No.
No.
This is,
You represented Mr. Rossetti?
I didn't say I represented him.
All
I
right.
objected to
You
your
may
question.
answer, Mr. Lynch.
No, I just provided what I thought were the answers to the best of my ability to your production request. And that's what I did.
Right, and when you provided it, it was 9 full pages, not 4 with 4 or 5 redacted. Is that right?
It was provided, this appears like the form, with the exception of what was redacted.
Yes, sir. And so what we were talking about when that came up, you wrote a quote, employee well-trained on monitoring. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And employee well-trained on monitoring, you got that information where?
From what I witnessed during the site inspection, where the employee was showing you how the monitoring was done and describing the process.
What employee?
I don't know what his name was. The person, I don't even know if he was an employee, but the person that you that was on site on February 12th when your office had someone sort of showing them around.
Zarius Dupree.
I don't know his name.
All right. And well, if employees weren't using a tube to monitor the atmosphere for any of these chemicals, I know you don't know any of the chemicals or what Demetrius Phillips was exposed to. You've already testified to that. Then how would he be well-trained on monitoring?
I'm referring to, in that comment that you're referring to there, I'm referring to what I witnessed as he described the use of the monitoring equipment that was there. That's what that refers to.
By the monitoring equipment that was there, you mean the Venice Pro sensors, right?
Yes.
But if they're not using the tubes to monitor the atmosphere, notwithstanding that's what the tank entry permits required. You saw that a moment ago, right? The tubes are required to monitor the atmosphere.
I saw that.
So they're not using those. They're not monitoring, right?
Objective form.
You may answer.
They are monitoring, but they're not using that the colorimetric detector tube system. I agree with that.
They're monitoring for oxygen and not the chemical.
They were monitoring for oxygen. They were monitoring for flammable materials and some toxic materials.
Is TDI flammable?
Actually, it is.
Is MDI flammable?
I need to look it up.
Is nitric acid flammable?
No,
Sulfuric acid flammable?
no,
Phosphoric acid flammable?
no.
Toluene diamine flammable?
What chemical was that? I'm sorry.
Toluene diamine?
I'd have to look it up.
Styrene?
Yeah, flammable,
Xylene?
flammable,
Benzene?
flammable.
And your testimony is if it was flammable, the Venice Pro would detect it, and you can't give me any cite for that, right?
The Venice Pro would pick up levels of it that were in the flammable range. But I think what we already covered in this deposition was that there can be levels below flammable range, which also have the potential to be toxic.
Did you read the package insert that accompanies a Venice Pro sensor?
No,
You did not.
No, no, I did not.
Would you defer to the manufacturer of the Venice Pro sensor about what it can detect and what it cannot detect?
I would.
And if the Venice Pro did not accurately monitor these chemicals, then it did not accurately monitor whether the condition to enter the tank was safe.
I think we, yeah, I think that what you're speaking to is that there are limits.
Calendar, DM.
The Venice Pro monitoring system, as I envision it, is able to monitor for some things, including oxygen leveling, combustible gases, and some toxic materials, but it's not able to pick up, very, very low levels of materials, and it can't pick up the full range of everything that may have come through there. I agree with you. I agree with that.
All right. Do you know how soluble TDI, benzene, MDI, styrene are in water? Soluble.
I would have to look all of them up individually.
You don't, without looking that up, you're not prepared to testify about that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, generally organic solvents are not particularly soluble in water. They tend to not mix well with water.
So, I mean, you see there are issues with cleaning styrene, MDI, TDI, xylene, naphthalene with water-based cleaning solutions, right?
There could be detergents and other things would all impact how well it would be cleanable. But yes, there might be issues there. Broadly speaking, there might be issues there.
And you're aware that Demetrius Phillips, the reason he went in these truck tanks was because the chemical companies wanted a, quote, bare metal clean, close quote. Were you aware of that?
Check in the form.
You may answer.
I don't know what the standard of clean was. I can't speak to that.
But you know that he went in there to clean out the balance of the chemical, right?
I know that there was, I don't know exactly what he went in to do because I've not been provided with that information yet.
So you don't think he just went in there to relax for 2 hours at a time, do you?
Check the form.
Do you?
No, he went in to clean. I'm saying I don't know what the standard of clean is. And I don't know which tanks he entered or how long he entered. That information has not yet been provided to me.
And that's why it reads on that, it's a wash certificate, right?
I don't know what you're referring to.
All right. You weren't provided any of those either, right?
I don't have any of those.
Were you provided with the document where the EPA sanctioned Trimac Fairburn $225,000? Did you see that?
I don't recall seeing that.
Tell you what has been previously marked as exhibit number 12. You see that?
I can see it.
United States Environmental Protection Agency. Have you ever heard of that? The EPA?
Yes, I have.
You ever heard of a consent agreement between, this case, in the matter of Trimac Transportation, National Tank Services, 6800 McLaren Road, Fairburn, Georgia? That's where you were for the site inspection, right?
That sounds right. Sounds right.
And a consent agreement with the EPA, do you know what that is?
I
Administrative penalty assessment proceeding.
Objection.
under section
He's trying to answer your
3008.
question. He was trying to answer your question when you interrupted him.
You have an objection?
That objection.
You see where it reads, nature of action 1, this is an administrative penalty assessment proceeding brought under section 3008A of the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA.
I see that. Yes, sir.
And the parties, complainant is the chief of the Chemical Safety and Land Enforcement Branch, Enforcement and Compliance Assurance Division, United States Environmental Protection Agency. Do you see that?
I do.
The respondent is Trimac Transportation, Inc. Do you see that?
I do.
And here's the governing law. You see all that?
Got it.
Yeah, I was not gonna force you to read through all of that. Then the alleged violations, you see that? Item 5, beginning at
see it.
paragraph 77. That goes on for several pages. And then you see where it reads stipulation.
I see it.
All right, we can get on down to terms of payment. Respondent is Trimac. You saw that above, right?
Correct.
Consents to the payment of a civil penalty, which was calculated in accordance with the act in the amount of $225,000. You see that?
I do.
And that was paid to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, according to this document, right?
I see that that's where it should be paid. I don't know if it was paid or not.
Right. And then we go on down. See, this is signed by, looks like Lana Hurl, VP Legal and Corporate Secretary for Trimac, for respondent. See that? The foregoing consent agreement in the matter. In other words, Trimac consented to those allegations and a payment of $225,000 pursuant to that consent agreement, right?
I see
Check the
that.
form.
Check to the form.
You weren't provided with this?
I've not seen this before, no.
And did you realize it was June 5, 2020?
I've not seen this before.
What's that? Is the judge available? Okay. Yeah, I'm ready when she is. All right, I got your message and here comes a photograph, Bonnie. While we're there, can you see this photograph? Dr. Lynch,
Oh, I'm sorry.
can you see that photograph
I see it. Yes.
referring to earlier? And this is looking in through the top of a semi truck tank that, do you agree that's more than 4 ounces of chemical in the bottom of that truck tank?
Object form.
Check the form.
You may answer.
I can't tell what that is. It looks, I don't know if that's a solid or a liquid or what's down there. I can't tell what that is.
Well, the way, you don't know how TDI or MDI or, I mean, are you familiar with chemicals that if they interact with an atmosphere or water, they can become solid on the surface and remain liquid underneath?
That, yeah, there's a reaction process could,
Right.
determine rates of reaction, but I'm not a chemical engineer. That's not my.
And when that happens, what that would force an employee who went in to clean that truck tank to do, that employee would then not only encounter fumes and a mist and a dust if he takes a hammer and a chisel and a grinder in and grinds the chemical, he would encounter both the dust, the fumes, the vapor, the mist, and the liquid, right?
Potentially, sure, potentially. But it's just a hypothetical. I have not seen it, so potentially those things.
Did you go out to the Trimac Fairburn location other than the time that I was there?
No,
Was that yes or no?
no,
All right. Did you ever go out there when there were employees working on the wash rack?
no.
You ever heard of a book called Healing Paralysis?
Yes.
Yes, sir. And you don't claim to be a medical type healer, is that right?
Not at all.
Okay. Have you ever been in a semi truck tank?
I've never been inside of one.
Have you ever testified on behalf of a workman in a situation like Demetrius Phillips was in?
Object to form.
You may have.
Can you restate the question?
Sure. Demetrius Phillips, you know that he was a worker, right? He climbed in semi truck tanks, cleaned them. You're aware of that, right?
That's my general impression. I've not read his deposition, but that's generally my impression, that
Yes,
it's involved in washing those tanks, and that it might have included going inside of tanks to clean at some point.
And have you ever participated in a case as an expert on behalf of someone like Demetrius Phillips?
And object to form, but you can answer.
I don't know what you mean by like. Do you mean have I ever, I mean, I've done both plaintiff and defense work.
Yeah,
For
and
work,
you
yeah.
said, yes, sir. And what you sent over last night, you said this was just a small portion. You testify, what percentage do you testify on behalf of working men like Demetrius Phillips and on behalf of entities like Trimac Transportation, Inc.?
So what I'm not good at, or what I don't do is, I don't keep any sort of a running list of everything I've been involved with. But if I had to, my impression is that it's equally likely that I would do work for plaintiffs as well as defendants. And I would, if you ask me to sort of break it down, it would just be a guess, but I would imagine 50-50. I'm not particularly one side or the other. It's
So, have you ever reviewed a checklist for evaluating chemical exposure?
Oh, that's a broad question. Can you be more specific there?
Yeah, page 498, part 4, evaluation of hazards, table 15D of the book that is on your website, 2 over from the Bible, the 6th edition, entitled Checklist for Evaluating Chemical Exposure. Have you ever seen one?
If you'll pull that up, I'd be happy to look at it.
Sure.
There are lots of checklists for evaluating that people may put out, but it might help if you showed it to me.
You didn't use one in this case, though.
I haven't generated any opinions yet, sir.
Okay, so you don't have any opinions today that you haven't already shared with me?
I'm only answering the questions that you have. I've not rendered an opinion because I've not been asked a question yet. I'm only answering questions that you have.
So you haven't been asked to render an opinion on behalf of Trimac, then?
Not yet.
And when do you think they'll ask you to render an opinion in this case?
I don't know. I don't know exactly how that will go. Again, I was surprised by. That's why I just produced what I produced, because I've not generated an opinion, and I'm not sure what. Certainly, what you're aiming for in this deposition, except to understand maybe what my background, knowledge might be.
So you're surprised. When do you normally generate your opinion on the eve of trial?
Objective form.
You may answer.
No, generally I render an opinion before I'm deposed.
Right, but you didn't do.
So not having been deposed, I don't have yet all of. I haven't rendered an opinion, so the uncertainty about what to expect in a deposition was unclear to me.
So you haven't formed an opinion yet about this case, is that right?
Right.
All right. And you're not sure when you're going to do that?
Yeah, I'm waiting for documents.
All right. And what documents are you waiting for?
Anything that would relate to the case, but that would include things like policies, air monitoring information, air monitoring methods, exposure, tank entry.
Is that Judge Bain?
Forms that
Hang on one
Mr.
second.
Phillips made.
I'm sorry, this is Judge Bain. Go ahead and finish your answer, and then we'll need to take this call. I'm sorry.
Records that would deal with issues of work practices, exposure, those kinds of things.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
This is James Potts.
Hi, it's Debbie. How you doing?
Hello, Debbie. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Good, I'm doing all right. All right, so I just want to make sure that hopefully everyone will be Spain. So I'm going to connect her right now. Are they ready? Can they hear?
Sure, we're ready.
All right, hold on for me.
Mr. Potts, if you want me to take this down, you're going to have to get the phone really close to your microphone.
Very well. Thank you.
I don't know if a conversation with the judge can be transcribed like this. I think that goes against the board rules. I think you better get clearance for that.
What's-
I have Judge Bain.
Hello, Judge Bain.
Hey.
Hey,
Hi,
this is
good
James
afternoon.
Potts. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Matthew Gettinger and Michael Rossetti, we're here deposing the defendant's expert, and we served a notice to produce, and we got some redacted documents, and that came up over the course of this deposition. Mr. Lynch said that he provided that document to the lawyers. It was not redacted. I reminded Mr. Gettinger and Mr. Rossetti of Uniform Superior and State Court Rule 5.5 that requires a privilege log, which they refused to provide, and said that they've got 30 days to respond to this, not differentiating a notice to produce to a non-party, which is what was served on Mr. Lynch, and a document request to a party, like in this case. Unfortunately, we're now at the end of the deposition, so I'm not sure it's going to help us much today. What I respectfully request is that Mr. Rossetti or Mr. Gettinger or Mr. Lynch or be required to produce, pursuant to the rules, a privilege log to you so that you can make a determination about what portions of these redacted documents we can see. For instance, there's a 9-page document, and I think 4 or 5 pages are redacted. That's all. Go ahead.
Judge Boehm, I just wanted to point out that I believe we're on the record in this deposition, and I know the board rules about transcribing and recording conferences with the board. So I want to make you aware of that.
Well, I appreciate that very much. If you all are in agreement for the court reporter to continue taking this down, I'm fine with that, but I do appreciate you letting me know in advance. So are you all in agreement with that? This kind of goes back to our earlier discussions we've had. I try to tread carefully in conference calls and give some guidance. I don't intend for anything that I say right now to be an order directive unless I specifically state that. So having clarified that, are you all okay with the court reporter continuing to take things down?
This is James Potts. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and Your Honor, this is Mike Rossetti. I'm fine with it too. And frankly, if it's permissible with the court and agreeable to Mr. Potts, we would provide a privilege log. It is a relatively short redaction overall by comparison to the other items that were produced. But we would be happy to produce that to the court within the next 48 hours so that the court could have that and we could possibly resolve this issue.
Yeah, that's all. That's all from us, Judge.
That's fine.
Thank you for your help. Yep.
That may be one of the easiest conversations we've had on this case in a while. So
Yep.
if you all would, I'm trying to think of the best way to, you're welcome to upload it into ICMS, but definitely if you would let Debbie in my office know once that's been done, or if you want to email it to us, I would like it definitely email to Debbie so that I can act on it. I know time is of the essence right now, so let us know once it's prepared and we'll take it from there.
That sounds fine. Your Honor, if it's fair, if it's all good with everybody else, we would prefer to just email it so it's not actually on the board's site.
Right. Yep.
That's fine with
I
me.
was thinking about that as I said it. Yeah, let's do that. If you would just email it to Debbie with a copy to everyone else, then we'll go from there.
Very good. Thank you, Judge.
Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, Mr. Lynch, I think that's all the time I have today, depending on what happens. I don't know, whether we'll be reconvening your deposition. I'm not concluding your deposition, but I know the agreement was 4 hours and I'm sticking to our agreement. So
Thank you for that.
appreciate your time. What's that?
So thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Be safe, gentlemen. Anything you need from me, Bonnie, as far as documents? I'm going to leave this on so that you can get what you need.
We're going off the record at 3:15 p.m.
You be safe, Mr. Lynch.
Take care.